What up, y'all? We got Chaka Glass today here on Elev8. Wow, this dude is freezing awesome. I mean, pretty freaking cool. His artwork is crazy. I don't know. It's just out of control. Super cool. Been following him for a while. It's awesome. I can't wait to do this interview. But really quickly, I want to throw it out there. We are looking for some help. We need your help. Elev8 dolls, Elev8 dudes. We need some Elev8 ambassadors. Sign up at elev8ambassadors.com or elev8dolls.com or elev8dudes.com. It's really cool stuff. Anyways, let's get into this interview with Chaka Glass. It's cool. All right, y'all, we're here with Chaka Glass today, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Oh, anytime. Yeah, happy to share, my experience with you guys. This is really exciting.
So first question, how did you get started blowing glass, man?
Well, so it's an interesting story. I was renting this house in college with all my metalhead buddies. Like we basically just wanted to have like a house to jam in and and then also, do our classes and all that stuff. But really we wanted to play music. And so I'm a drummer. I've been drumming for I don't even know how long anymore, like 26 years or something like that. And so we all got this house together. It was like 6 of us. And so it was just crazy. It was just like this split level house out in Amherst, Mass. I went to UMass Amherst, and I was finishing up my psychology degree, and I just kind of wanted something to, I was a good little student, so I got all my shit done, and I had a lot of free time toward my senior year, and I was kind of like, all right, well, do I start getting into graduate level courses or do this or do that, or like weigh myself down with that? And I wasn't really sure if I wanted to get into the academic world or do counseling or anything like that. So I was working in a lab at the time, and so I had things I was working toward academically, but at the same time I liked, I knew I was good with my hands. I knew how to learn something because at that point I'd been playing drums for about 10 years. Right. So I knew how to learn a new thing. And there was this guy behind this house that we rented, just happened to be blowing glass back there. And he was like, he was into it maybe 2 years, and he was doing like pendants, a few chillums, little pipes, things like that. And, just learning a lot of techniques from his buddies. He would have his buddies come in and work here and there. And, I just came in one day and he sat me down and was like, oh yeah, try it, mess around. And I remember that exact moment because it was like, oh, it's hot, and then you stick it, and then what is going on? It's not moving anymore. And like, whoa, like, and so it just kind of like was like, well, I have to figure this out. I have to master this. I have to get my head around this because it's so fucking cool. And so I just did a lot of little stuff for him, making little earrings and pendants and, just like the little cabochons for something else he was working on. And we eventually kind of like partnered up in renting spots at the campus center to sell our work. And so we'd man the booth and we'd sell stuff, and I'd get all sorts of ideas from people. And, I was learning from him. I was learning from my buddy Gabriel. I was learning from this dude REA. I was learning from all these guys a little something different, and it was a lot of old school stuff. It was like fuming and implosions and just all beginner stuff.
It's all still my favorite.
Yeah, exactly. Learn how to make a mushroom, all that kind of stuff. And it was just like, oh, okay, dope. This is fun. And so I just got started making pendants. And I stayed in that house for probably 4 years, probably a good 2 or 3 years after I graduated. Just stayed in that house, was playing with the band, just having a wild good time, playing college parties and stuff and just having a blast. And then, making work and selling it at some of those parties and getting into pipe making like little fish chillums. Like I'd make, these little chillums with like, the tail was where you packed it. And then the little mouthpiece, you kissed the fish when you were hitting it,
Yep.
put the two little googly eyes on, and, I'd press out some fins and stuff, and it was fun. And I used a lot of amber purple and blue moon and caramel, like that was the jam back then. It was just like those colors, those silver striky colors were what was up. And like 90% of my work was that stuff. And then, about 2 years into it, me and the guy who taught me, this dude Atticus, who I had first learned from, we both decided to up our game, and we both took a Mylan Townsend class.
Fresh.
And so, we went out there, and of course, Mylan is like, don't make pipes, make art or whatever. It's like, so it was funny. And I actually met Joe P in that class. Joe had been working for maybe 2 years himself. So, and of course, he was already doing fantastic work. He was doing these beautiful little hermit crabs and stuff. And there were a couple other people in that class that were, we're all kind of at the same level of just making a lot of, like not a lot of sculptural work, more a lot of kind of like solid, pendants and marbles and stuff. And so Mylan was a chance to learn some sculpture. Really, that's what I went for. And I just soaked up so much knowledge in that class. And, that guy's a boss in his own right. He really just has done the medium for so long, and like has explored so many different interesting things. And his books were a big guide for me in understanding the medium and understanding how to do tests, that you have to kind of be a little bit of a scientist when you blow glass. You've got to you've got to repeat a process, and in repeating that process, change little variables along the way and figure out, how do I get the fuming to stick the right way? How do I get this thing to work the right way? How do I get, the tubing of the right size to fit, or whatever it is? And so all those, a lot of those sensibilities I got from learning from Mylan, and that was really cool. And I just did it was like a little weekendy type class, and he put us up, and we went out to his studio, and he showed us also how to photograph your work, a lot of like good industry knowledge. And that class was just like really opened it up for me. And after that, I went home and I got better at my sculpting, and I tried more ambitious things. And of course, it was just like only being 2 years in and not even knowing how to bridge anything yet, was definitely trying. It was like, I was learning like the four corners welding method, where, you make a seal, and you hit the north face first, and then you hit the south face, and then you wait for those to cool, and then you hit the other faces, and you hope the whole thing doesn't crack, and all that kind of old school stuff.
You mentioned bridges. How long in your career before you even knew what a bridge was?
Probably like 4 years, and it's funny because I see these kids getting into it, and that's the first thing they learn is like how to bridge, your seal, so you get a good seal, and you can just work that seal all day. And I didn't, so there were so many, but in a way I was glad that I didn't, right? There were so many obstacles to doing hollow work that I actually beefed up my solid knowledge, and my color knowledge. And the next class I took after Mylan, maybe 2 years later, was a John Kabuki class.
Okay.
And that was mind blowing as well, because all he does is make marbles. And so it was like, holy shit, he's developed this technique where he's working layers of color up into a marble, and he's not calling it implosion, he's calling it compression, because he's got an understanding of it that goes deeper than most people. And he's got a color knowledge that goes deeper than most people. So he understood how to work the air out of color, for instance. And, that was a lot of what he shared with us. Also, how to build a cane the right way, where you start with like, a finger or thumb size piece of, nub of color that you work all the air out of. You really work that nub in the flame and kind of almost mix it against itself. And then, you set it up, and then you lay like 4 mil stringer of another color down, so that the ratio is different, so that when you pull that stringer down, it's just a very thin layer of color over that thick base layer. And just little things like that led to, I did a lot of flower implosions before and after that class. And obviously after, it was a lot better. But, it was like, really cool to see how the experimentation just goes so far, and you can mess around so much with all the different, just making canes for those flowers. You can mess around with so many different color combinations, and kind of like a jawbreaker, have all these different layers and achieve colors that you didn't think you could achieve before. I mean, I was doing stuff like a thumb of cherry covered in 4 mil star white, and that gave you this beautiful pink that I wasn't able to get, and pink with depth to it, because when you imploded it, that white would be at the very lip of the petals, and then it would go to that deeper red, and then incorporating, and that was just too solid. Those were opaque colors, but I was getting an effect, that made it look like I was using transparency or something. And so there's still a lot of knowledge there that I just think a lot of people don't even appreciate, But I mean, it takes. That's the thing about glass, right? It's such technique heavy stuff that you really have to almost do it to, you kind of have to do it to appreciate it. And so it's just really, that's why I love that we have all these events now, like Michigan Glass Project and TFO and all these different things where people, the general public can kind of check it out, or collectors and enthusiasts can check it out and really be like, have that aha moment and be like, oh, okay, that's how the hell they do that, And I think we all love glass and get addicted to it because of those aha moments, and because of that.
It's that puzzle solving and the not understanding.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a big thing with Kabuki's class as well. It was like, I want to get this petal shape. How do I solve that? I want to make, a jellyfish like he makes it. How do I maybe make it a little different? How do I maybe integrate clear into the implosions to box in the colors in a certain way? I remember making these cool, for a little while I did these cool little Nautilus implosions, and I would use, I'd basically do dots in a spiral, but I would use a little clear dot on the edge of every one of those dots to make it to kind of like press the color in toward and create that more finely defined Nautilus spiral. It was a really interesting thing. I'd even got to the point where instead of doing a dot of clear, I just drew a line of clear, kind of encircling those dots, and it would butt up to those dots. And then when you implode them, those dots would actually have more of a shape of kind of jutting into the center and creating that Nautilus shape. And like those types of little, revelations, those aha moments, those are what I live for. So like I have less fun, admittedly, I have less fun making the work I've made before because I know how to do that. And I have so much more fun developing a new tech. And that's why, in my work now, you see me like, oh, this tech is this new shit I'm doing. This new tech is this new shit I'm doing. Like almost just about every year I come out with some type of a new tech that I try to even then keep up with, but it's tough. Like you only see so much Blizzard tech from me because it's time intensive. It's my headiest tech, but it's also something I spent like the summer of 2017 making nothing but Blizzard tech and developing it and getting really good at stick and snapping. But at this point, it's like I do it when I feel like doing it because I've got so much other fun things I want to do. And, Blizzard tech's fun when I want to do it. And that's also how I operate with shops. Like with shops, I'm like, when you buy work from me, you're just going to have to see what I've made in the last month and choose from that, because I don't really like, I don't make good work when I'm told to make it.
Absolutely.
I make good work. Yeah. Based on
and
what
pressure's good. It's just, it feels like all of a sudden you got thrown in a box, even if it's your own box creating.
Exactly.
It's like, I don't want to be in there.
Yeah, exactly. And what's funny is like, I almost exclusively work with blue Stardust and white, and it's just like.
I just got hooked on blue Stardust. Holy shit, I love that color.
It's amazing. Yeah. And, I kiln at 1035 for my garage and I anneal at 1050, and I don't really ever go above 1050. I know the kiln does in spots go above 1050, but the big thing is I've been sleeving blue Stardust now, and for me I thought that was wicked risky because I thought, holy shit, this stuff's going to crack on me because it's a sparkle color and you're encasing it, and that's like cardinal rule number one against that you don't do with sparkle colors. But it's just the kind of thing where you find a way around it. You use the knowledge from all the classes and you figure out a way to do it. And like, I've at one point collabed with my buddy Aaron Slater, and he like has his killing at 950 because he's doing really deep implosions. And I'm like, how the hell do you killing at 950? That's crazy, garaging at that temperature. But again,
that's what I grew up on. It was in the back of the book, and it told you to. And I didn't start doing 1050 or even 1100 till about 2 years ago.
Right.
It took that long to realize, like, there's a better way.
There's a better way. And that's the thing, is like, it doesn't necessarily want to crack. It cracks when it gets shocked, not when, it can be at a number of different temperatures and still be happy. And so all that knowledge, came from all these classes. And that's why I'm kind of referencing these classes I took, was because that's where I got, my color knowledge from, all this stuff. I mean, obviously going to these events, talking to people, talking shop, cutting it up, chopping it up, you end up learning tons of stuff from people just in passing. But these classes are like these great opportunities to drop everything and drop the hustle and just focus on improvement, and I'm a big self-improver. I'm really big into, hacking your brain, hacking your own psychology so you can get to a better place, and not accepting where you're at, obviously accepting yourself with love and self-love, but being able to also, be hard enough on yourself, or just not lie to yourself about the fact that you could do even more, and so for me, glass is like a great great vehicle for that, right? Mm-hmm. Because it allows you to play with what you're comfortable with, and then push that comfort zone, and then play with, like, just like kind of like, I want this to crack. If it doesn't, I failed. You know what I mean? Like I want to mess with this so much.
You didn't push the edge far enough.
Push the edge, exactly. And so, so getting back to, those classes after Kabuki's class, and kind of messing around with color and playing around with layering, and doing these implosions and stuff, I kind of got into, I was kind of like bringing all these different techniques I had learned into some type of a voice or a style. And so I was making, like wrap and rake pipes that would have like a jellyfish marble on the side or something, you know what I mean? Or just learning how to do, messing around with hollow implosions instead of solid ones, and seeing if there was something there. And so just kind of pushing those boundaries. And then after the Kabuki class, about 6 years in, this is kind of on 2-year increments. So after the first 2 years, it was Milan, then Kabuki. And then my 6th year, I took a Robert Mickelson class. And that, is always going to be a good class, because Robert knows what the hell he's doing. And, it's interesting to see him in relation to the pipe world, but I always saw him in relation to the glass art world, and just the kind of the fine glass art world. And as like the leader in that, and the, and just, he's got such a great eye for proportion and for, just kind of for form, because he's a great sculptor. And so like, his thing of just like, taking his class, the first thing we sculpted was our hand, because it's right there, and you can just look at it and you can sculpt it, and it's a perfect reference, And so that was a really good class, because at the end of it, he like just did demos. He was just like, oh, just draw something on the whiteboard, write out what you want me to make, and I'll make it for you. And I wanted him to make a goblet just because I wanted to see his whole process. And but then other people were like, someone asked him to make a blown leg, and he just made this beautiful leg, with a beautiful, dainty foot and a nice, just nice curves, and just this beautiful leg, and like, it was the coolest thing that he could just pick up a piece of tubing and just do whatever he wanted with it, and that's kind of the magic of glass blowing, right? That's the mystical quality, that makes you feel like you're kind of God, is like, yeah, I can just take this thing and I can make it do what I want, and it's very tough to do that, and it takes all these years, but once you get to that place, it's very satisfying. And I could see his own joy in being able, in just enjoying his ability to do that. And so that was a really good class for just getting foundations of sculpture down and understanding, when to add glass or when to work from a bubble, from just one bubble. And so after that, my, what I became interested as far as classes was just more like specialized knowledge. So I ended up taking like a Lauren Stump class a couple of years after that. And, I like Lauren, Robin, and Mylan were all the three big ones I really wanted to learn from, because I just seen them in all these books, and seen them in places like Contemporary Lampworking, and thought, well, these are pillars of the community that, you really want to work with. And if I could also take another class at this point, I mean, I can, but what I'd like to do is learn from like Sally Prash, because she's just such like a scientific beast, and like, she just does like incredible work, and each of these artists has a different sensibility, a different background, and so like I see it from a psychological end as well, of what is this person trying to dig up in their subconscious, or what are they trying to dig up from within and reveal to the world, and so with Lauren, it was really cool, because like it was just like these feats of technicality that I had never really witnessed, where he was taking a milli, getting it to optimal heat, and it was a soft glass class, so it was a little out of my comfort zone, a lot out of my comfort zone actually, and it was really interesting to see him take a milli, get it up to temp, and like squish it, and like be like, oh yeah, like I have so much control, I can like almost ruin this thing by like squishing it together, but then pull it apart and it's all good. You know what I mean? Like, because the whole thing's hot together. The core isn't cold, and it's not going to like, melt up against itself. It's not going to squish against itself. It's all squishing in unison. And so he was like, oh yeah, like you can like fuck with it and do all this stuff. And then he pulled it out perfectly and nipped it up. And he's like, see, like the image didn't distort because I know what I'm doing, and it was like, oh damn, this guy does know what he's doing. And like, he had a really great, sense of the difference between soft and boro, and the fact that one was just kind of a higher temperature gradient, where you can do everything you could do with soft, that with boro, but you have to treat it at that higher temperature gradient. So you can do the acute angles and the stuff where you kind of almost just tack something on, but you have to do it in the boro way, and so it was just so interesting, because I also see that like with Marcel, for instance, when I worked with Marcel and visited the Starship for a month, it was so cool to like just get that same sense of like, he's understanding that you're just working in that higher temperature gradient, and you can kind of do everything you can do with soft, but do it with boro. Now, I don't technically really believe that, but that's, I think, kind of the sense that they have of it. And I just don't think I'm there yet, right? Even after 17 years, it's like, I'd need to play around with soft more and adapt those ideas into boro more, whereas my brain is in boro, you know what I mean? I think most pipe makers' brain is in boro, but I really advise every pipe maker to play with soft glass, because you will gain insights about boro, because like when you pull a milli in boro, it's the same principle. You have to sink the heat in. The heat won't just get there, and you can't just blast it all in. You actually have to stage it in there. So that means you have to heat the piece, take it out, let that first wave of heat make its way in, go back in, heat it up again, come back out, let a bit of a skin form so you still have control on the outside. Let that heat sink in, go back in, keep soaking. And that's why they call it soaking, because you're getting it like a towel that's totally dry. The capillary action gets the water into that towel and soaks it. Well, it's the same thing. The heat soaks into the glass receives it, and it behaves differently once you get that whole milli all the way hot, all the way through multiple stages of heating, and not just one big long, frying the piece, where the outside is going to be like way hotter than the inside is. you get that staged heat in there, and then the whole thing is happy, and then you can do whatever you want with it, and then do your theatrics, and then pull it, and it's perfect, and it's just so amazing that when you get to understand it on that level and get up to that level of like, oh, okay, this is waves of heat making its way in, and you work the heat in a certain way, and when you do that, the whole medium changes, and you have control over it too, because you're able to let that skin form. Luckily Boro sets up so quick. In comparison to soft glass, the windows are totally different. The window in soft glass for workability is like forever. You can move that stuff forever, but the window from it's set to it's cracked is like this tiny window. You know what I mean? So you've got a lot. It's a delicate balance there. Whereas with Boro, it's like Play-Doh. It's like, you've got to get it raging hot, and then it's only going to be moving for about this long for this little window before it decides to set up, and you've got to add more heat in there. But from, it's set to it's cracking is a nice big window with Boro, and so you can like the other day I was doing a vac, I was vac sleeving a piece of prep, and I ran out of gas. And I was like, oh shit. So I just put the thing, and I couldn't detach from the one side or the other side because I was mid vac. Half the thing is already sucked onto the tube. So I'm like, oh, so I just set it on my bench, and I cranked out the regulator, grabbed my other tank from the other room, brought it in, put the thing on, had a little bit of trouble threading it on, was like, oh shit, got it on there, and then went back to it. There was a little bit of cracking that happened, but it's fine. You know what I mean? I went back in, sleeved the whole thing. It was fine. And that's like what the murder you can get away with Boro. And that's one type of murder you can get away with. With soft glass, you can just tap something on and fuse it, and it's pretty much fused. You can pretty much do a tack fuse, and it's good, and it's sellable, and it's like, that's murder too, but it's just two different types of it, and so it's, that I always advise people, pipe makers who are, so versed in Boro to play with soft glass a little and see what you learn, especially for milli makers. I think it's a really, really good educating move, and so working with Lauren was really cool because I did a bunch of soft glass paperweights with one of my mentors, Nancy Moskin. She was someone I worked with in Boston who I made these little like Paul Stanker, Lauren Stump style paperweights where you suck the glass over. Yeah. And that's like you again, like when I was applying my Boro mentality to it, I would heat the blob of glass, the blob of clear glass to put over the sculpture. I would heat the crap out of it, and then I'd put it over, and it would like fall into it and like go all over the place, and it was just a mess, and it would like leave like inclusions and stuff, and it was just like not cool. And I realized like, oh, you have to stage the heat in because you need that whole blob to be hot. You introduce the blob, it all moves as one big blob, hits the thing, and then vacs onto it all evenly and just spreads over that thing. And that's when I kind of got it and understood what was going on with soft glass. And still to a very limited degree, because I only made maybe 60 or 70 of these weights. It was a side project that was kind of a like a pet project, like just really just for fun, Okay. And so, but again, in that process, learning from Nancy, she was a woman who was like a bead maker, had done hot shop stuff in the 70s, was a bead maker lady in the studio I was at in Boston at the time. This was around the time I took the Lauren class because she vouched for me. And the class we were taking at Corning was the Lauren 2 class, which was, you had to take the Lauren 1 class, but she hit Lauren up and was like, I basically taught this dude everything that you taught in the Lauren 1 class. Can he take your Lauren 2 class? He's pretty much ready for it. And Lauren was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. And so that was, so I was learning a lot of stuff from her just on the side, a couple days, every couple weeks, we would revisit this stuff. And she would go through with me how to pull the canes. And we were using like Boro punties to hold the soft glass a lot of times.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. And that's what Lauren does when he makes his paperweights. He uses Boro punties to stick onto the weight because it's great because like that punty, you don't need like this big, huge moil or anything because it's boro and you're using so much less heat on the soft that the boro doesn't go anywhere. And in fact, when you pull that boro punty off the soft glass, you don't crack it off because you could leave a little boro speck on there, which would contaminate it. If you tried to then polish off that weight, you're including some boro in there, that's going to crack the whole weight, you know? So it's like, or it's going to at least crack that region. And so the way he would pull his punties off is he would like, you know, heat all around, and this thing would just pull right out of the soft glass. I mean, it was just because the soft glass is so much softer and responds to the heat so differently that by the time that's melting, the boro is just getting warmed up, you know? So it was really interesting that you could use one type of glass as a tool to handle the other type of glass, you know? And so, you know, I was making those paperweights and I was having fun, and I was learning from Nancy things like color texture, right? Things like, you know, you don't want to mix like really glossies with mattes, you know, you you want things, you want there to be consistency. You also want there to be odd numbers, you know, you don't want this rigid, you know, kind of stillness in the glass. I mean, I'm the Iceman, I'm all about rigid stillness, but you don't want, you know, 4s and 2s and all these things where you don't have anything interesting, any centerpiece, and then, you know, other things coming off of that. So we were making bud groupings of little flowers and blooms and stuff in 3s and 5s. We were putting leaves in there in 3s and 5s. We were following things like Fibonacci sequences, where you do one interesting thing here, one interesting thing here, 2 here, 3 here, 5 here. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, you know, little pine needles over here, whatever it is, you know. There's actually a really great Ken Rosenfeld paperweight in my collection here, because I like, that's another like side thing I collect is like the flower paperweights, because they're just
they're crazy.
Dude, they are. Exactly. They're crazy. They are a way higher level of anal retentive than I've seen most pipe makers. Now, pipe making is obviously there with people like WJC and you know, like ramen is just a whole other level of crazy of cleanliness. You know, a lot of these really high level clean pipe makers are hitting that level, but at the same time, you know, these paperweight makers have been doing this paperweight stuff for way longer than any of us have been making pipes. And so the progression of technique is just so out there. And that's the thing. They're so crazy. And Ken Rosenfeld is one of my favorite. He's kind of lesser known, but I mean, I think in that paperweight world, he's very known. But as far as like, when you talk flower paperweights, everyone just says Paul Stankard. And it's like, okay, great starting point. But you know, there are so many. There's Chris Bazzini, there's David Graeber, there's, you know, all these amazing. That's
who I have a paperweight of, is David's.
Oh God, yeah, and he is just like so damn clean. It's just insane. And actually, his apprentice, one of his apprentices, Nesser Glass, does the little nuggets in glass that are like really from that tradition. You know, taking from that tradition of, you know, how you do that and how you build that up. And it's really interesting to see people apply it into our aesthetic and our world and our culture of pipe making, you know. And so that was a really fun little side project, side hustle kind of thing. Not even really a side hustle, because we didn't make really much. We spent more money buying the nice optical quality pucks to encase these and to build these up than we were making. But it funded it at least, you know.
Right.
But again,
and the experience that you learned.
Exactly. I mean, the biggest thing I got out of it was my mentorship through Nancy, who, you know, I wasn't taking a formal class working with Nancy, but Nancy was like dropping all this knowledge on me about like, look, this is going to clash with this, or look, this texture doesn't work with this texture. You know, you're clashing these, not just colors, but textures against each other. Or, you know, you might not need to do all these stripes on this little petal of this flower because it's good enough with one stripe. It gets the message across, you know what I mean? Like, and so it taught me to not overcomplicate things. And at the time I was, you know, at that time I was making like bubblers with all sorts of like wigwags all over them. And like, I was making crazy inside out pieces with all sorts of junk in there. And, you know, I was making like stuff that just had a lot of technique in it. It was very technique heavy. And it's like that whole movement of wigwag, that as that progressed, it progressed with technique, not with statement necessarily. You know, the statement they were making is like, look at how many wigwags I can stick into this thing.
Right.
And that was a statement of technique. It wasn't a statement of, you know, of some type of deeper meaning necessarily, which, you know, is fine. It's like, it's high craft, you know. I mean, the really crazy stuff like what Cowboy was doing and Banjo and Eugene and all these guys when they were doing wigwag, and you know, JP, you know, I think it was JP Toro, I think back in the day, like, you know, was doing like these really crazy, you know, like just like all these different sections. Some were wigwag, some were more beach ball sections to frame things in. So that all progressed from like, okay, I'm going to use like a vomitous amount of colors, you know, to I'm going to do now a really refined, you know, that it took on its own refinement, you know. But then the whole paradigm changed when I'd say in like 2008, kind of 2013, you know, that kind of era, when people started making characters. It was glass that looked right back at you. And to me, that was really interesting because I'm not a big, like, you know, comic book or character type guy, but in the context of what was going on in glass, it was really interesting because it was pieces that looked right back at you, that you could give it a name, you know what I mean? Like, and like, I could see, like, I would say Zach P is like one of the,
oh goodness,
kind of, you know, yeah, one of the kind of, you know, starters of that, because, you know, Elbow was his apprentice, you know, and then Elbow just took it to a whole other level with his, even really Elbow made even simpler stuff that just like really focused on like that eye sculpt and the expression on the Bronto and all that kind of stuff. And then Coil and, you know, all these different people who were, you know, I'm probably leaving out some really important names, but, you know, just people who were making things that looked back at you. And, you know, I mean, Jag with his kind of, you know, Cesare inspired ladies, you know, I think it was Cesare, you know, it's like, it's really interesting to see how a lot of the pipe makers took a lot out of the book of these classic, like glass art classic people, like Mickelson. I mean, you know, Joe P took a lot out of Mylan Townsend and Mickelson's book. You know, you could really see it in just the fact that he took Mylan's month-long like apprentice intensive, and then after that was making a lot of sea life. And, you know, with Robert, you know, just like Joe's sculpting became so much better because he was learning from Robert, you know. And so it was like these pipe guys were taking this from the glass art guys and then bringing it into pipes and changing the paradigm in pipes. And it was, I just feel really lucky to have witnessed that, just spectator wise, you know what I mean? But then getting to, you know, make my own decisions and how I wanted to voice what I saw in glass. You know, as you can tell, I love the medium, right? And as you can see in what I'm talking about, I'm in a process here through these early years of exploring the medium and exploring what's possible with the medium. And then in around 2012, 2013, deciding to make a statement about that. And that statement was the idea of glass as just this amazing medium. And so ice was the perfect vehicle for that. It was like, oh, glass is like ice. It freezes, it melts, it kind of goes through phase change. It kind of has these, you know, these interesting qualities to it that no other ceramic does, because glass is technically in the family of, you know, ceramics, you know. And so it's, you know, it's like just, I think, way sexier than clay is, you know what I mean? And, you know, nothing against my people in the ceramics, in the clay, you know, world, but it's just like, there's just the fact that it's clay that you can see through is pretty cool, you know, and that's like one way of thinking about it, you know, and like, it's just really interesting how, you know, how it undergoes these phase changes and how people have, you know, there's like these urban myths about like how the window panes in old windows, you know, sag, which actually isn't true, because
it's
glass
false.
doesn't, Yeah, it doesn't happen in 200 years. The only reason they set it up is so they wouldn't fall out, because they put the heavier, thicker part of the pane at the bottom.
Right.
That's how they would place them in the windows, because when they would blow bubbles, the way they would get flat glasses, they would blow these huge bubbles and then flatten them and then cut them up. And you would get.
Could you imagine that? Like the
Oh my God.
process to do that
Yeah.
shit?
Oh, old school glass blowing is so interesting because, you know, what they were working with and what they knew how to do was only so much, you know what I mean? And a lot of it was in these niches that where they didn't know what they had been doing 200 years before or 100 years before in Italy, where they had mastered it. But, you know, it was some American glass factory where they were just using molds or something, you know, and it was like really interesting to see, you know, glass is like that. It's like, there's all these secrets, right? And there's things that are reinvented all the time. I mean, I'm always under the impression that I'm not doing anything new. You know, I'm always
rediscovering it, maybe.
Yeah, rediscovering, re-revealing, you know. And that's the thing is like, I try to take a humble approach of like, I'm not really doing anything new. I'm putting ideas under an umbrella of a concept, right? Under the idea that it's all ice. But all these different techniques I'm doing are very old techniques, and, you know, many of them aren't even that sophisticated. And
but what is new is your culmination of putting it all together, taking each thing and then your vision and making that happen.
Yeah, and that is what it is. You know, it's giving it voice, you know, through my lens, you know, and that's the thing is after my Lauren class, I tried out some Millie stuff. I played around with that, you know, but you know, I also just kind of was at a place after that class where, yeah, I was ready to get my ideas out about the medium. And my work is about appreciating glass as a medium. It's not necessarily about appreciating me. It's about appreciating the medium. Like, my whole thing is like, the medium is the message itself, you know, like there's really not a better medium to represent ice. You know, I mean, you can do beautiful paintings, but they're still two-dimensional. You know, it's like ice has this incredible quality to it of being.
Have you ever done any ice sculpturing?
No, I haven't. But I actually had a show at Highbrow up here in Maine where they brought an ice sculptor out, and he was, you know, he made this really cool fish sculpture because it was a collaboration show with 603 Glass Joe, and so he made these glass, you know, these ice fish, you know, and it was really cool. And I would love to mess around with ice sculpting because but you know, the thing about it is like, even then I'm like, oh, this is even, you know, the medium of glass lets you do so much more because it's additive, you know, like you can add ice, you know, you can take a heat gun and like get it drippy and get it sticky, you know, and stick it to another piece of ice and build, but it's just not the same way you do it with glass, you know. And so it's just really interesting how even ice itself, it has its limitations, and it disintegrates in room temperature, right? And so, like, you know, like the equivalent person to glass, if glass were to disintegrate in their house, would be like a lava person, you know what I mean? Who's like made of lava and like can't handle a piece of glass because it'll melt in their hands. And like, I just think about like all the time how lava people will never get to appreciate headies, you know, but but it's like, it's just an interesting thing when you try to think of what's the relative, you know, idea of, you know, what ice is to us, you know, what glass is to some other creature or whatever, you know.
Right.
But to us, glass is this thing that doesn't melt at room temperature, that we get to appreciate, and that has like this ability to last so long, you know. And that's like a really epic thing about the medium too, is that, like, you know, unless you have a house fire or something. I mean, there was this woman at one of these paperweight shows I went to way back when who, you know, she was like, oh, I used to have this huge collection, but I had a house fire. And I was like, oh my God, like, that's just devastating. You know what I mean? To any collector, you know, to have some kind of like catastrophic event like that where your whole collection gets destroyed, you know. And it speaks to the fact that this stuff is rare. It's rare that I even finish a piece in a day, you know what I mean?
No doubt.
that like, that like it doesn't all go to hell on you. It doesn't crack. It
So
doesn't.
you still to this day have things that crack on you
Oh yeah, totally, totally.
because you're pushing the edge, probably, right?
There's part of that. And part of it is like, I forget that I will lose track of my window, for,
Oh,
that internal clock. I still lose track of that clock because sometimes I'm just like, well, maybe I can keep texturing this, and I can get all the way to the end of it and it won't pop on me and it still pop. Or, when I was messing around with recyclers, some of the ways I was doing the seals and stuff, I was like, yeah, this thing's going to pop on me. And like, I've got like, one of my biggest weaknesses is probably that I'm still stuck in like a production mindset. So,
I'm guilty too.
yeah. So like, if you look at someone like Bubbles, for instance, like he's crushing out like a bonsai, every, I don't know how long it takes him, probably a couple of days or a day or two to make each of those bonsai pieces,
Yeah.
and, it seems like it's a lot of work, all the pads he's making, and that those must have been like crack heaven on, for him all the time, must have crack hell, I guess, because they were just, all the frit work and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, and I noticed he posted the other day, he's like, I don't make a lot of accessories. And I thought like, yeah, well, I make a ton of accessories because I have a very production mindset. And when I get into making like spinner caps or chillums or this or that, I love making them. And it's a safe thing to make because it's well within your competence and you're able to get it made and get it out to the shops. And I mean, I have a big relationship with shops. I don't sell direct a lot because I don't really, I hate the customer service game. Like when I have to do customer service, I do good customer service. I stick to it. I give people extras if there was any issue with the sale or anything like that. I try to talk to people. I try not to ignore DMs. There was this one guy who DM'd me, who was like, oh, I just got one of your pieces. And I was going to hit accept and I hit delete instead, and it deleted the post. And if you're listening to this podcast, get back at me, dude, because I will answer my DMs. But it's just like, that's the thing is I like to I like that aspect of it, but it also gets super overwhelming because there's a lot of interest in my work, and from just the shop side, I'm booked out 18 months right now,
Right.
On shop drops. And it's just like, I'd rather work with the shops because they act as good ambassadors for me, my brand, and like they are on top of it. Like if a collector's like, yo, I'd really like to see these two artists collabing. Okay, maybe we can set that up, but I'd rather set it up kind of through a shop and have the shop take, a little bit of just like a finder's fee.
Cool.
Thing. Yeah, because, I mean, it's part of the ecosystem of the pipe industry. Right. It's not just like shops represent the collector's enthusiasm. Like when you see someone bother to have a head shop, pay the rent for that shop, stock it with all these beautiful pieces, put employees in there, pay those employees to be in there, all that stuff. It's like, that's a big effort. That's a big endeavor. And people don't just do that.
You got to have the love for it, 100%.
They do it because they've got the love for it. Exactly. There's a gazillion other things they could probably do that are probably easier that they could make a living at. But they do that because they see there's a need for it. And so they're part of the ecosphere of that. They're part of the ecosystem. They're a lot of them are collectors themselves, and I would hope so. And so it's like, I've been really getting into mineral collecting. So like I enjoy collecting a lot lately because I'm kind of finally at a place in my career where I actually have some disposable income, and I'm kind of like, I'm going to invest that into cool stuff. So like lately I've really been into mineral collecting. I'm sure like if anyone who follows my stories, like you'll see like I post like all sorts of minerals all the time because to me it's like earth glass. It's like earth heady,
right?
And it's really fucking cool. And like it's it's totally non-functional. It's just something you look at and hold and feel the coolness of it. I'm not into any of what I call the BS about like crystals having healing powers or any of that stuff. To me, that's a bunch of BS, and like there's nothing scientific about that. If someone proves it through, if someone fails to disprove the hypothesis through a scientific study, then hey, that's great. Yet to be done. But I don't need that to get my rocks off. No pun intended. but it's like
you appreciate the science,
I appreciate the science,
physical,
the mineralogy,
physics, right?
Yeah, the physics of it. The fact that this thing took way longer than any pipe or really any piece of art has ever taken to make. These things, these tourmalines, the barrels, the like all these different types of like there's all these silica based minerals for one thing, are incredible. I mean, there's also things like phosphate minerals like vanadinite. Vanadinite's like a lead oxide that's just like this amazing, has these amazing formations, and they take a long time. They take more than a year. They take more than 10 years. They take hundreds, thousands, millions of years to form. And that's crazy. Like I have this awesome, sitting in my living room here, I've got this awesome amethyst geode. And what I'm looking at is a lava bubble, right? That formed in a pocket of magma that then over the course of millions of years, amethyst crystals grew into the space of that lava bubble, cavity, and like, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. And so to me, like I'm collecting something that took a long time to form that, at a certain point, the earth will not have any minerals because they'll all get mined out. I mean, they'll be too deep to get to, you know what I mean? So it's really crazy that these things exist in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. And they're an interesting indication of order happening in what is 85 to 90% chaotic universe. The rule of the universe is chaos, it's entropy, it's all things kind of falling apart. Anyone who owns a nice car knows you got to keep up with it. Anyone who owns anything that's a nice and that needs upkeep knows that the second you don't give it the love, it dies. Same thing with our entire industry.
Human beings, everything.
Everything, exactly. It all falls into disrepair without, what I call good, orderly direction. That spells out, as an acronym, that spells out God. And what's interesting about that is that to me, in my own philosophy, is what makes for kind of a fulfilling life, is going towards God. I'm not religious, but to me, it's whatever I see religious people who find God or whatever and make right of their lives. And to me, it's interesting because even just not really being religious myself, but certainly having spiritual tendencies. I see things like these minerals, or I see life on Earth, or I see all these amazing things like the pipe art industry, and I see that they are things that are like rare events, basically. Like the rarity of someone making as beautiful a pipe as Eugene can make is as rare as Eugene being born, which wasn't anything guaranteed. You know what I mean? And so, like, I have a very
God, I love the way you put that, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I've thought deeply about it for a long time.
It tells. Holy.
I appreciate that, and I'm so happy to be able to share that with somebody else who can also appreciate that, and maybe that'll give you something to chew on for the next couple of days. Who knows what, but like
just meeting artists like you, you think you got this stuff, but each time I get to meet one of you artists, it's like, holy fuck, man, this has been the best adventure in so long. So thank you. And thank you for working on yourself and then sharing it with us.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for, being there to receive it, because, that's what it takes. And that's the thing, is like, we're an ecosystem, we're a community. And like a big thing something I'm really big on is like, it takes a village. Mm-hmm. So that's also why 100%. I'm huge on the shops. And like, now I'm, 18 months booked out. Now there's good and bad in that, right? Like there's certain month-long projects I want to do that I'm kind of holding off on because I've got a career to manage. You know what I mean? And so it's like there are risky things I'd like to present to the world that are in there, you know, that I'm kind of churning around in there, and I'm thinking about, okay, how would I do this, you know, both just physically, but also how do I present it in a way that makes it an enduring thing, that like when someone scrolls past it on Instagram, it's going to stop them in their tracks and they're going to be like, wow, that's really cool.
Right.
You know, there are definitely those ideas, but having this demand from the shops is a balancing act. And so there's a bit of the development and playing around. Like I just released this tech called Dat Bubbly, which is a very basic tech. You know, I'm basically swirling around a bunch of clear, introducing a bunch of bubbles into it, and then, you know, blowing it out into a tube, sleeving that in a tube so that it's fresh and ready to be, you know, worked into something final. And it's interesting because it's a basic thing. Other people have done it before. I know Matt Eskuki did kind of like a recycled, kind of like where he was recycling his glass, you know, into a kind of bubbly tech like that. But you know, it was something I just came to because I was like, oh, I got a bunch of extra clear that I keep in a bin. You know, all my little clear bridges and stuff, that all goes into a bin. You know, all the little, you know, bits of handles and stuff, that all goes into a bin. And I was like, what do I do with this? I don't know. Maybe I'll put it in a furnace. Maybe I'll coat some tubing with it. But I just like developed this thing because the Clear Show happened down in Tea Leaf Gallery. My buddy Gabe, really awesome dude, big supporter of the industry, you know, and he, you know, has this Clear Show. And I was like, I want to do something really different for the Clear Show. And so I was like, I'm going to introduce all these bubbles in here. You know, I'm really interested. Again, I did some Google research on the fern layer, the FIRN, in the Arctic, which is like when snow kind of decomposes in a cold environment from ordered geometric snowflakes on a fluffy top layer that have just fallen into a half melted, half deconstructed. You still see some crystal forms, but things have kind of half melted because the environment has created that situation. And then below that layer, you get this bubbly ice where the snow is turned into ice. And now, you know, it's a metamorphosis all happening at the level of, you know, below freezing. Wow. You know, and so it's really interesting because ice doesn't just metamorphose in phase shifts from water vapor to water to ice, but it also takes all sorts of different geologic kind of forms. You know, I mean, ice is considered a mineral. I was talking to Digger Glass the other day, Jeremy Sinkus, and he was talking about how ice is technically a mineral. It's considered a mineral. And I was thinking, man, it would be so cool to have like a specialized cabinet, you know, that's like refrigerated, that like you're like, oh, this is ice from, like, you can't handle any of this, but well, this is ice.
We don't have it, but there's some kind of scientific place wherever. It's here in Colorado, I feel like.
Oh, cool.
That they go to all the extremes, they drill down and get those.
They get the ice core samples.
And it's just like rooms and rooms and rooms of thousands of years old. And so that's really neat. It's
all sorts of, and that, you know, the ice cores are really cool because I actually did a series of pendants that were ice core samples that were like basically just like little encommoed bits of like, you know, clear mixed with a little bit of white, clear mixed with like just some bubbles, maybe some blue V, you know, maybe just a little bit of cobalt, just all these different layers to represent an ice core. That's, you know, and cool. So I've really explored. It's been great to use glass as a vehicle for exploring the geology of ice and for exploring just how great glass is, again, at, you know, communicating that to people. And it's, for me, it's a tap on on people's shoulders of, you know, learn about this stuff. Maybe you'll learn about climate change too. You know what I mean? Because I'm a big believer that like man-made climate change is a real thing. I don't, you know, I side with like the majority of scientists that are kind of all warning us about this very catastrophic event that will happen, you know, and so it's, you know, to me, I don't want to be overtly, it's become a political issue. So it's like, I don't want to be overtly political about it because I don't think it's my place to tell people how to think about this stuff. I think people are best served when they come to their own conclusions about this. Like,
Absolutely.
there's a lot obviously that's been happening in our industry with certain people posting certain things, especially with COVID happening and everything. And I understand it's an incredibly complex thing about, do you really stop the whole economy for something that isn't, devastatingly killing people, but it's also a big, it's a big problem, and it's like, I understand the complexity of that, and that it's not some conversation you can just have with anyone, even though we all try to talk about it in passing in the grocery store or whatever, oh, when's this all going to be over? And it's like, what's funny about it is that we even think it's all going to be over. I mean, it's like, we're entering a time when, facilitated by the population of the earth, by things like climate change, by the fact that we are infringing on ecology, that you're going to just get a lot more of this weird shit happening. And it's like, some dude, Duncan Trussell on some podcast was talking about it, how like some guy like decided to have a bat for supper and now we're all here, or whatever the hell it was, and it's just like, yeah, this is the world we live in. It's complex. And so, what I've come out of it, like, I've tried to mature myself over the years and tried to ask, try to be really honest with myself and ask the tough questions. And I really restrain myself from commenting on a lot of this stuff when I see it on Instagram. And that's where I am. I'm not really on Facebook. I think Facebook is for grandma. No offense, grandma, but it's like,
it's for the family.
Yeah, exactly. And Instagram is just where I see a lot, my peers in the glass world. And, I see a lot of different artists posting all this stuff that I really don't agree with, because I think it's a bit arrogant for them to call everyone else sheeple or whatever it is.
Hey, they can call them sheeple as long as they recognize they also are sheeple.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the thing. It's like, we're people, right? And
right.
It's bad enough being a person. When you're a person, you're subject to all these. This is what I got out of my psych degree, right? I had to get something out of it because I decided to take a left turn into glass, and so because right after I graduated, actually, I didn't continue on with psychology at all. I delivered pizzas while making mushroom pendants,
right.
and jellyfish pendants, and like did that for like a good year before kind of just jumping off the deep end and saying, like, let's see what happens. I'll be broke for a couple of years and I'll blow glass. I wanted to actually show you, I got this sweet thing on eBay. This is fluorite, and it lights up like crazy under UV.
Holy
I don't know if
shit.
you can see that.
Yeah.
But it goes like, it's kind of hard to see, but it goes blue. And it's just the coolest thing. It's just, again, I'm so into this mineral thing right now. And, it's really interesting because to me, it's like I was saying before, the universe, like you see these little pockets of order, but most of it is chaotic, and I think kind of relating to what we were just talking about, there's just like a chaotic conversation happening online. And I think people are trying to take the chaos of what's happening with COVID and try to order it into something that is, a narrative of some type, are we doing the wrong thing? Are we doing the right thing? And again, to me, it's like, it's just so interesting how, I've just, when I learned psychology, getting back to what we were talking about before, what I got out of it was that I have a good reason to doubt myself. I have a good reason to realize that my own psychology, even just the way your visual system works, 90% of what you're looking at every day, or at least 50% of it, isn't even there. It's like your brain's filling in those gaps because that's energy efficient for your brain to do that, and your brain's evolved to do that. But that means you miss things, right? Mm-hmm. Because so it's like no one person can ever see the whole truth. It's just the world is just far too complex for us to get there. You have things like Dunbar's number, which is the fact that you can only really understand you and the relationship between about 150 people, and that after that, like it gets really hard to manage and understand how everyone relates to each other. So it's our brains have computational limits, and when I recognized that in myself, I kind of just realized like, there was to me an arrogance about assuming too much about the world. So when I get into, if I ever find myself getting into conspiratorial thinking, it's kind of like, do I really want to go down this route? Because if I do, I'm going to fry my brain for one thing, just trying to compute it all. I'm going to get lost in it at my own expense, right? Like I've got things to do, and so I don't want to get lost in this search for truth or whatever, that might not even really be there. And the other thing is, it's kind of like I really go between criticizing the way things are, because there's a lot of things that are just stupid and messed up. Like if you look at our weed laws, it's like, why was it so stupid for so long? Well, it was stupid, but we also changed the weed laws. Like we did that shit. You know what I mean? We voted for that shit. And like that shows you that our system has corrective abilities, right? And that in other countries, like they don't have that or get that. And that's like a great thing to have. And so, I go between like being like, well, our system's fucked, we need to tear it all down, to
we have an amazing foundation. We just need to get more involved and keep trying to put the order in and keep talking and keep doing it.
Keep talking. And
we got a good system.
Exactly. And and that's what I do believe in. And when you look at something like a vaccine being developed in a year, that's a record. And that's a record that goes
fucking crazy.
It's insane. It's insane. And it's like, it kind of blows my mind that it's actually this testament to like how technologically advanced we are, that we could face this thing and then be like, all right, we're going to come up with this vaccine. And it's a new vaccine technology that doesn't work like old vaccines did, which is good, which is a good thing. A lot of people think like that means it's like this crazy thing. And it's like, no. Like you have to understand.
We just learned something new.
Yeah.
And it works better.
Right. We're learning new technology. And I think what's interesting is that some people are handling the change around us better than others. So like I had no problem with masking. I was just like, oh yeah, this is what you need to do. Other people see it as an infringement on their rights and all this stuff. But I also think that's a byproduct of the fetishization of individualization in this country, where we kind of forget that we also have a collective responsibility, and something that helped me in my life a long time ago was understanding individual responsibility, was understanding that like, why did I got a DUI a number of years ago? And that was like a big turning point for me, of being like, what are you doing? Like what, this was terrible. You endangered people around you. You endangered yourself. You're fucking your life up. And it just got me to realize like, I'm the one who made that whole situation. I'm not going to blame anything else other than myself. And like, I'm not even going to make an excuse for why I was drinking that night.
It's that word.
That's all on me.
That word right there. I find people will find an excuse so fucking fast. When you need to find the excuse, but then you need the solution for that excuse.
Right, exactly.
And it's so easy to find an excuse and say, well, this was this, or this was this, or this is this.
Right. Oh, this
fucking mountain, climb it.
Yeah. This piece cracked because the glass did that. It's like, no, the glass does what it does. You fucked that up.
Take responsibility.
Take responsibility. Yeah. And like that helped me so much in just growing as a person, in my relationships, understanding that, if I want to have better relationships with people, I should own what my part is in that, and also let them know that they're not, they're not a victim of me necessarily, or I'm not a victim of them, that we both have agency and that we both make our own decisions, and that you don't blame other people for why something got messed up. You take your own responsibility for it, and you really try to make sure your end of it is in perfect order, And so for me, it's a lot of this stuff having to do with kind of order and chaos, and that's like where I get really jazzed, and it just intellectually, that's where I have seen in just my own work that stuff come out. Like for instance, the Ice Cube Pendant. I've talked about this on a couple other podcasts, but the Ice Cube Pendant is like this perfect instantiation of the idea. It's an encapsulated physical representation of the idea of the fact that everything does break down, and the fact that life is like this battle between order and chaos, and that like order and chaos in our lives are ever present kind of forces, or ever present, just like it's like the nature of the universe is this order and chaos kind of dance, right? And so what's really interesting about that is the Ice Cube Pendant is this ice cube, which is a representation of something man-made, right? Which is order, right? And it's ice, so it's ordered crystalline water molecules. And also it's geometric, which is referring to the masculine archetype. So lines, geometry, chisels kind of features are associated with the masculine. They're kind of gendered that way in a sense, whereas curvilinear forms are associated with the feminine. And so when you look at the drip that's coming off of the ice cube, it's curvilinear, and it's also water, which takes on any form, which is of the chaos side, the chaotic kind of side, the chaos side. So it's just really interesting how I didn't know that. Like I made this thing and I developed the design over a couple of years, and I just thought it was cool. I was like, it's a dripping ice cube. That's cool. But I didn't get why there might be a deeper appeal to that. And I think part of that is that it represents this dance, right? This dance between yin and yang, between order and chaos, between masculine and feminine. And it's a really interesting thing, because the thing that it's saying too is that no matter what man tries to do, Mother Nature always takes back. We say man-made, and we also say Father Winter, but we also say Mother Nature. Why do we say Mother Nature? Because the archetype of the feminine is associated with kind of the universe, right? Is that like we are born out of it, and so the feminine is that which is encompassing, that which is kind of the rule. The man-made thing is the exception. It's that which gets the chance to come out of those rules, but it will also get reclaimed by nature. And so that ice cube, which is an ordered object, will melt and it'll cease to be, and so it kind of represents that whole idea of what the inevitability is of the dance between yin and yang, and what our job is to, in our own lives, seek order, make things orderly, make the world a better place. Like even something as simple as picking up some trash you see on the ground makes the world a better place.
It does.
You don't think it does. We see the world with all these problems, like we think we're insignificant, but we're very significant. And like, really, like I used to think I didn't necessarily matter because there's all these other people and whatever. But like, I kind of had a spiritual awakening a number of years back where I realized like I do matter, and what I do matters, and how I conduct myself matters, and to be careful with that, and that kind of also relates to like, again, online, I don't really like to, get into it with people, because like part of it is just like, I have a finite amount of energy to spend on things, and I think one good way you can get certain ideas across is through your art, and it's through just like digging up whatever the hell is inside you, and putting it out, and so with ice, I thought, this isn't as technical as doing wigwags all day, but it's or even doing like way better, cooler sculptures than just a cube, but at the same time, it communicates something. It's a simple idea that communicates something forward. And so, getting back to what we were saying with the different classes I took, what I really appreciated about all these classes is I got to get into the head of like all these different artists and see what they were revealing and what their jam was, like after taking Lauren Stump's class, I think a couple of years later, I took Coyle and Bishop's class, and Bishop is like very spiritual, and he's on some other shit, you know what I mean? And like Coil is just like he's like a real artist, you know what I mean? Like Coil, his work is expressive, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it really looks right back at you. I mean, those monkey faces look right back at you, and he's got like that scientific kind of background, so it's really interesting to see how he applies that into just the even wall weight of his pieces, and just like the kind of the look of his work is really, really particular, and it's just like,
it's a Coil piece when you see it.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's something about that of that gives him a very particular certain place in the industry, and so learning from that, both of them, was really awesome, and just gave me a slightly different sense of how to approach the medium, and even just the types of tools I should be having on my bench, that kind of stuff. Like Coil always has like a little, as per his scientific background, he's got a pair of rollers, and like right after his class, actually it was after Kiva's class, but it was, really I got the bug from Coil's class, was to have a little set of rollers on my bench, because, it's nice to just shore up little things and get them into, into alignment in just the right way. And so that was really illuminating for me. And then after that class, a year or so later, I took Kiva Ford's class, and like Kiva's just like a technical beast, you know what I mean? He's just really, really understands glass in such a scientific way, because he's a scientific glass blower by trade. And like he really is creating things that are very beautiful, but doing it in a very technical way, and so his pieces speak to me on that technical level, and on just the beauty for beauty's sake level. And that's what I try to do with my work. Like, I'm not necessarily trying to make super deep, like I'm saying, like some of my pieces have that in them, this idea of the dance between the masculine and the feminine, and all this kind of order and chaos stuff. But, I'm not trying to make a lot of political messages. Some of it is a tap on the shoulder that maybe we should pay attention to things like science, but it is, again, it's like appreciating glass for glass's beauty, and that's why I really appreciate people like Cube Ford's work. That's why I appreciate people like Coil's work, and just like these glass blowers that like make stuff that is just beautiful on its own without needing to make any message beyond that. I mean, Yushin's work is a perfect example of that. Like, I don't even think of it as art. I think of it as very high craft. And I don't think that takes away anything from it. Just call it high craft, because high craft says something about how much someone is willing to dedicate to making this, this one form, or, these few different forms. Like, Yushin's got a few different kind of like pieces that he makes, and he's built this really incredible kind of platform canvas that other people, that he shares with other people to make these incredible collaborative pieces, and his incredible solo pieces. And it's just like this very natural progression through his career of dedicating yourself to the medium. And that's what I see in his work, is like this insane dedication, And so like I took his and Calm's class a couple of years after Kiva Ford's class. So I learned from Yushin and Calm. Now they were like, "Why are you in our class? Like you're this established glass blower. You've got your thing that you do. I don't get why you're doing this." I can see all these. At the time it was at Tea Leaf Studios, where there was a lot of these younger glass blowers, many of whom since moved to Colorado, who were taking that class because they were just like fanboying out over Yushin Calm. But I also was too. For me it was like, I just want to watch you guys work, because I get something. Like, especially when
you get something from that, watching a craftsman craft.
I think I was already blowing glass for 13 years, 12 years by the time I took that Yushin Calm class, and I probably got more out of it than a lot of those other people did, because I've been blowing glass longer, and you kind of notice things more when you've been blowing glass longer. You notice, certain little moves they do, just certain little ways of just little tips and tricks, you know, things like that. But just also just how you know, how much they're using the kiln versus using the annealing flame, you know, what their workflow is like, how far they pull down a piece of line tubing before they start wigging it up. You know, like everyone's got a different kind of sense of that and sense of proportion in how they build their work. And those are the finer details of appreciating someone's work. And so, you know, Yush and Calm are both like two like really distinct artists, you know, that do distinct, awesome work. I think, yeah, like looking at Calm's work, like it's like, I think there might be a bit more statement there, maybe than Yush's work. You know, at least to me, there might be more because he's dealing with characters with the birds.
Mhm.
You know, there might be a little bit more expression there. That might make it more of like an art thing. I mean, obviously, you know, to me, I'm using, you know, in this context, at least in this conversation, I'm using the definition of art to be something that conveys a meaning beyond the medium, you know? So for me, like when I look at, for instance, Yush's work, the reason I would call it high craft is because it's simply just the beauty of the craft itself, you know? And yeah, getting back to that, that's how I like to speak forward, you know, my work through, like, for instance, a medium like Instagram. It's like, I'm not going on there and doing like the Goliath thing where I'm like, hey, what's up? I'm this crazy guy with this crazy personality, which is awesome because I love he's just hilarious, you know, and it's awesome. It puts a smile on my face. But like, that's the thing is like, I love Goliath. I don't know if I necessarily love his work. Like, you know, I think, you know, he makes cool stuff, but it's just like, if any reason I'm following him, it's for him. You know, I don't put myself on my page. You know, I rarely ever even have a picture of myself on there. If it is, it's with glasses on and I'm working. You know, so it's like I really just try to let my work speak for itself, and I really just try to let my work be the thing that people are appreciating on my page because I honestly don't think I have, you know, an especially great personality or anything. It's just like I enjoy doing my work. What you'll see in my posts is that I obviously enjoy doing my work, and you know, and that's what I'm selling. You know, I'm not selling. I'm not trying to really market with, you know, like I even kind of like I've made stickers and stuff, but I'm kind of like I don't know. You know, I'll probably make a couple more, but like. That, you know, marketing isn't like even a huge part of what I do, you know, and getting into like having all the merch and all that stuff. It's great. And I've done it. And I've done that because I've seen the collectors want me to do that and want to support me in that way. And I think that's great. But I don't think it's my strong suit. I don't think designing merch is my strong suit. I think making the pieces that I make and getting the ideas out that I'm getting out are my strong points and are where the conversation really happens, right?
Right.
And again, I'm not like a mass appeal artist, you know. I mean, I don't think I make like, you know, people like Chaka Glass, for instance, who make all these cool ass different characters and really at a very high technical degree where he's really nailing the look of the expression and all that stuff. Or J Smart, for instance, you know, those are artists that have a mass appeal because they're dealing with, you know, characters that had mass appeal before they were even artists. You know, they're doing designs that were done before, and they're making them in 3D and glass, and they're interpreting them, you know, and that's awesome. And
Yeah.
and it's a high level of skill, and it's, I mean, I don't think I can necessarily do what they're doing. Like, I would get it off in a little way. It would get off, and it wouldn't exactly look like Homer Simpson or like, you know, like the Road Runner or, you know, like this anime character or whatever, you know. It's like they're doing a really technical thing, and I think again it's more of a high craft thing, but it's also art too because it's relating to kind of the pop art of those characters. And so, you know, it's like I think that's part of why, you know, Chaka Glass has like 100,000 followers, because like that person's doing a damn good job of doing the interpretation of all these different characters, you know. Absolutely. And then also putting them into different forms like bubble caps and rigs, and, you know, interpreting them into pipes too, you know, not just as a standalone character. And so it's like, it's really interesting to see that. But for me, I've never had that. I've never had that kind of like, you know, I guess ambition toward making characters. Like Stoked did a Grateful Dead themed show, and so I made a Grateful Dead bear in Blizzard Tech, and it was cool. And I was actually really proud of it because I was like, that looks like a Grateful Dead bear, and it looks like it's in motion and dancing. It looks like it's happy, and so that was great, and it was fun. But and it was like, okay, I can kind of do that, but it took me like a couple days to like struggle through it because I didn't necessarily. I kind of have trouble like doing other people's design, kind of proprietary, their kind of thing, and so for me, like really what I've been into is developing these techs, having a few different designs that I can put those techs onto, or like the cryo chamber design, for instance, is really cool. I've only made like 8 solo ones, they're around there. I've probably made more collabs of those than I have made solo ones.
Right.
I could probably do the crap out of that design way more than I am. But again, it's like I'm going to do that when I feel like it, when I really feel jazzed about getting an idea out with the cryo chamber. The idea there is that you're preserving something. And like now that I'm getting into minerals, I could see myself making cool mineral specimens to put inside these things, But, and then there's like the stupid little penguin design. Like that's a character, and it gets more toward the cutesy kind of character type work, which is cool. But again, it's... I call it a stupid little penguin because it's like something I kind of like half the time want to make, half the time don't. Like I realize it's just a cute design and I know it sells. You know what I mean? I know people like it. That's great, but again, it's like what I really jazz out on is like just the ice, and the fact that ice, it just does its own thing. And it's an appreciation of nature herself. And it's like this really interesting, it's become this like years long exploration of all the different forms of ice and all the different, and it's weird because it's like I made this lake ice stuff, which is like the swirly patterns with white and blue stardust kind of in a lot, with a lot of depth and like almost marbleized. And like I had been inspired by pictures I had seen on Google of like Lake Baikal, which I think is in Siberia, which is like this beautiful, I think it's a freshwater lake, and I had seen these like different cracks in the ice. And I kind of tried to represent it, but the swirls in there weren't really, curvilinear forms are not super icy. You know what I mean? Ice is jagged. And it's ordered, and it has that masculine archetype kind of sensibility to it. So, I was kind of like, well, this looks cool. I like how it looks. People are responding well to it. I think I'll keep doing it. And then a collector of mine, and I also saw it on Reddit or something, but a collector of mine was like, yo, check this out. This looks just like lake ice. And it was this lake with these swirling patterns of like in the ice that just had formed somehow. And it's just interesting because it was like, oh, that's art. That's like nature imitating art, imitating nature, Right. And it was like, oh, like I didn't realize that I was doing something that is found in nature. I kind of had a sense that there must be this form of it because ice like does all these different weird things. It'll, just like minerals do, minerals do a lot of these very geological, geometrical, or geometric looking, crystallizations, but also you get things that are called botryoidal formations, which look like bubbles, where it's like a bunch of crystals all hitting the inside of a bubble, and you're just looking at like the top layer of all those crystals, like kind of shooting up.
Oh wow!
And yeah, and I mean, even one of my mineral plugs was like talking about these fluorites he had gotten, which had formed these like ring patterns. They were like these balls that came together to form these ring patterns. It was like the weirdest formation of fluorite you've ever seen. Because normally fluorite is cubes, it's like just cool ass looking cubes that have like these cool zoned phantoms inside them of other cubes, you know, that was like the growth before it grew even more, you know, and the presence of other minerals there that gave it a color zoning that you can see within the cube. So it's like fluorite's just fascinating. And so even, you know, even in these like these mineral forms, you see blades, you see crystals, you see these bubble kind of forms, you see circles, you know, you see all type of geometry, and it's all, a lot of it's fractal, right? It's like that circle is formed of many smaller crystals, you know, and so it's like layers of complexity one on top of the other. And so to me, you know, like I think one thing that is also why I'm like so hype on minerals right now is because I was doing that in my own work. I was kind of building off of one thing and then another thing and then another thing. I was like taking these ideas and being like, okay, how do you build, you know, this next idea of making, you know, like now I want to put, you know, snowflakes on pattern tubing, you know, and then I also want to put wigwags in there as like a callback to, you know, to the pipe making world, you know, because like if I just put a bunch of snowflakes on a piece of tubing, it like looks like a Christmas ornament. But if you throw wigwags in there and you call them wind wags because you're like, well, this is the swirling, blowing wind in here, you know, that's like a whole other, you know, that gives it a whole other look. And what's funny is it like when I discovered that and I kind of joined those two together and was just like, oh, okay, this looks even better than just snowflakes. You know, it was again that remanifestation of masculine and feminine, because the order, you know, it's funny, the snowflakes, people think that's like some girly stuff or something, you know, it's like some little dainty little snowflakes. It's like, no, that's the masculine archetype right there, because it's geometric, it's ordered. You know, the feminine archetype in there is going to be the chaotic wind swirls. You know, the wigwags are curvilinear, and
That's pretty cool.
they're more chaotic, you know, and again, you see that thing creep up. Now, I might just be applying, I'm totally open to the idea that I might just be applying the shit that goes on in my head all day to my work. But, you know, this stuff doesn't come out of nowhere. You know, I mean, it's always a bit of Mother Nature inspiration with, you know, sitting at the torch and hashing it out. And, you know, with you know, our own artistic intuitions, you know, going into the work. But, you know, again, it's like I wasn't satisfied with just Blizzard tech, so I developed Lake Ice tech, and then I also developed the Ice Cave tech, which is where I'm doing the texturing. And what's cool about that is like it totally takes advantage of the light play, because now what I'm doing is I'm layering a heavy layer of clear over most of my sections. And so when I do that texturing, the light has to go through that layer of clear and then hit whatever's on the backdrop and reflect back. And it gives that, you know, that kind of water refraction look like at the bottom of a pool or something, you know?
Right.
And so it's really interesting to just see how also, you know, when I take like lake ice and I put the ice cave over it, like that's a combo that people are just like freaking out about and are like, oh my God, that combo, dude. And I'm like, wow, okay. So, you know, adding fractal layers of complexity on top, you know, it makes the work even better. It makes the work have even more, you know, more complexity to it, something more interesting to look at. But you know, it's funny. It's like I'm blown away at the incredible Millie work everyone's doing, at the incredible just like looking at Jake C's work and looking at all the crazy stacks of wigwags and like his Jawbreaker stuff, and like how like people are playing with the rainbow in a gazillion different ways, but I'm over here with just like white and blue, you know, just just doing like, you know, this kind of very constrained kind of world I'm working in. But for me, that works because my brain, as you can probably tell from this conversation, it goes everywhere. And it just, if I didn't have that constraint, I don't think I'd make like a consistent body of work.
That makes sense.
So, yeah. And so I like it actually really helps me that I have this ice thing to work toward. and that I've actually have kind of boxed myself and made myself the ice guy, you know, and that's okay. Like I'm perfectly happy with that, because in that there's plenty to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you know, I'm learning that I get to also get a lot of my creativity out in other ways. Like I play drums, so I've got a kit here that I play all the time, and you know, music is like a huge part of my life. You know, it's something I'd like to even learn more about. You know, I love to learn keyboard or something. I'd love to get into that kind of stuff. Of course, there's only so many hours in the day, but you know, it's like your creativity gets out in so many different ways. So, and that's useful to me, because sometimes I don't want to always be creative. A lot of times, once I've developed a new technique, I have to sell it. You know, it's like, okay, now you've developed it, and through the first couple iterations of it, you're now you've now developed it even further and made it look even more natural or better or whatever. You know, like with the ice cave tech, the first couple, you know, variations I did, you know, I was kind of, you know, soft with it. I was like, oh, I'll just press it in a little here and a little here, and you know, I'll get these faces carved up just this way or whatever, and it was like a very light texture. And now, because I'm using clear, you know, because what I was doing before was I was like almost pressing right into blue stardust or right into whatever surface color there was, and that the stiffness of the color was affecting my ability to really get a good carve. And so with clear, the fact that I'm sleeving everything in clear now and a thick layer of clear, I can really push the glass around because it's not very worked, and so it doesn't stiffen up. Mm-hmm. And so it'll really, like, I'll get it real gooey, and it gets real gooey. It's not like a stiff color that doesn't want to really move, you know? And so it's clear, you know, it's the best color, right? And so you know, it really will move how I want it to, and I can get these deeper depressions and get a more exaggerated feel. And when you feel these pieces in your hand, you'll even feel almost kind of like would feel like sharp spots where, you know, some of the glass spilled over onto one of the other cuts, you know, and it's like, and I don't mind that. I'm kind of like, yeah, that's actually like, you know, I don't want all the work I put out there to be like this perfectly polished thing. You know, I kind of like the fact that there's a bit of natural kind of roughness to it in a way, and my collectors like that too, you know, and luckily enough, thankfully enough, they've been liking that. And so it's been really awesome to get to do this as a living and get to, you know, explore all these different things. And what's funny is I just give myself more and more homework every time I make some new tech. You know, it's like, oh, well, now I have to combine that tech with all these other techs and figure out what is the most appealing or whatever, you know, or just figure out what really jazzes me up. But that's the thing, is like I ride this line between creating and coming up with something new and loving that process. That's always a really fun process of like especially the night you go to bed that you've been working on something, your brain's churning on it, and then waking up the next day and kind of being like, oh yeah, okay, I just had a cool dream about that, and I just solved that puzzle in that dream. You know, like that, like so many scientific advancements were made that way, where people, you know, different scientists were working on a problem and trying to figure it out and put their brain onto this problem and be like, what is the deal with this? How do I approach this? How do I prod at it that I learn something about it? And oftentimes it was through the dreams that they did that, because that's a way your brain, you know, kind of manages and works on reality, is by trying it out in a dream, you know? And so I really rely on that process. I don't get too frustrated because I know it will come. Mm-hmm. You know, I know the answer will eventually come. I just have to give it time. But like, and that's the fun of that, you know, of that whole creative process. But the productive process, where you then take that technique you've developed and you run it, you know, that is a whole other hustle, and I have to feel like it to do it. You know, if I don't feel like it, I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And I work on this thing where I'm either creating, I'm producing, or I'm organizing. And so I'm either organizing, which is cleaning my shop, cleaning my house, putting into order, shows I need to pay for, trips I need to plan, all of that kind of administrative stuff. That's all organization. And there are days when that's all I feel like doing. And that's when I do that, like today's a perfect example of a day I didn't really even feel like working that much. I mostly before I got on this call, I was at my studio just organizing things and just like getting like all this trash, put away, and like taking little bits of ends of things that I'm like, I'm never going to use this again, into the bucket it goes, and into the clear bin that piece goes, and that kind of stuff. And then you've got production, which is when it's that feeling you wake up in the morning and you're like, I'm going to make 21 hitters today, I'm going to make 30 spoons today, or whatever. Like back when I was doing production work, that was the energy. And like for me now, it's like more of like, I'm going to make like for instance, the beginning of this week I just made prep. Like I just railed out prep and I didn't even finish anything, and it was great because I know that that's going to be great when I feel like shaping things out and finishing them, which will also be a kind of a productive type behavior. It'll be a productive kind of exercise. And that's what that is. It's just like, do what right? Like, if I know how to do this thing, I'm like I can literally do something else mentally while I'm doing this.
Right.
And that's what that productive work feels like. And then
it will still come out well too.
Exactly. Well, it'll come out great because it's well within those confines, what I mean, of my level of competence, right? But then there's, the creative stuff, and that's when it's almost more like I'm sitting there just thinking about stuff, and I'm just thinking, and then I hit the torch, and I'm okay. Let's try this out, okay? And then I get a little discouraged because it didn't work out, and then I take a break and I take a walk and maybe I have something to eat, and then I go back into the studio and I've mulled on it a little bit while, and I think, all right, let me try this a little differently, and then it comes out nice, and then I'm getting excited because I'm like, oh, okay, I'm onto something here, and so I love that energy, and I go by how I feel. So if I feel like my brain is getting into creative kind of like potentiality, possibility mode, I go there. If I feel like my brain is getting into productivity mode where I really don't want to think, and I just want to like go, then that's what that's for. And that's like when I won't even put on like for my headphones, like I'll put music on those days, a lot of times on the creative days, I won't put anything on because like there's a conversation happening, where I'm kind of being very attentive to what I'm doing because I want to figure out what to do to accomplish this, this look I'm looking for, or make this certain shape I want, or whatever. And then, again, on the organizational days, those are days where I just find myself cleaning up this little thing in the kitchen, going into work, not really feel like doing anything other than, okay, I'll start, organizing my bench. Oh, that feels good. That feels like I'm accomplishing something here, and so that's how I go. And that's part of why I don't really like to take orders, because if I'm trying to be productive on a creative day, let's say I'm trying to make 10 chillums or something, and the first two, okay, I make the first two, but then the third one I'm like dicking around with some new way of putting icicles on it or something. It's like the creativity will come out, even though I'm trying to be productive, or like I'm trying to sit down and be organizational, or I'm trying to be productive or something, and instead I'm like just like welding rods together or something, or like, and it's like, I'm being organizational right now. That's what I'm really doing, and so like a lot of this is like self-awareness, right? And like noticing what I'm doing, that that is what I'm really supposed to be doing.
And I think that helps keep more efficient by keeping you mobile but still efficient, so you can switch. And when you do prep here, when the time's ready, it's not like you got to do a bunch of fucking prep. It's just now the creative can come and go. So that's really neat how you do that.
Yeah, and there's a really good book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and that book is like the Bible for any person who wants to like get truly creatively engaged. I mean, I think there's a lot of people in our industry who make like production and they treat it as a job, and then they have their life beyond that. And like there are so many days I wish I had just had that, where I could just like
I don't even know that lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting because it's like there's a lot of times I'd like to be able to treat what I do as a job, where I just go in and go out and I can leave it at the door. I can leave it at work. And that's partially actually why I have a separate studio for my house. I don't want to actually have a studio in my house for that very reason, because it's a psychological reason of having the two spaces be different spaces for different things. Home is like for me where I get to enjoy nature and all this stuff. Like I've been like really into building like cool like desert terrariums and shit like that are like really low maintenance. Really, you just water them like every 2 weeks or something, and they're like really easy, but you get to enjoy them and then do all my mineral stuff and like just create a beautiful place to enjoy rest and respite and all that kind of stuff. I have a sauna downstairs. Like I'm all about like chilling when I'm at home.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm at the studio, it's all about getting work done. And at the very least, I've created that distinction. But when I'm here and I'm resting, I'm thinking, my brain is thinking about cool stuff I can be making out of glass. You know what I mean? And so like, for me, it will always be a creative pursuit, but it's not necessarily, but then, there are days when I try to treat it like, okay, I need to get this, these pendants made for this shop order eventually, because I know they're gonna want pendants or whatever, and so it's all about striking that balance, and just it's a thing where like I have to literally be on my feet thinking about it every day, right? Because if I can't really go into auto mode. I don't really know what that's like. I mean, I think maybe for me, what it is go and show up at the studio every day. So there are days when I show up at the studio and I just kind of like sit on my phone or whatever. And I realize I don't need to be in here. I need to be taking a walk or doing something else. That just helps my mental or whatever, or, working out or something that's just like not to be at the studio. But like, it's almost like the first thing I need to do every day is get to the studio to figure that out. You know what I mean? Like I'll figure that out once I'm in that space and know whether I kind of want to be in that space. And so it's kind of an interesting thing. It's very psychological to me. And I think maybe I at times maybe psych myself out too much about it. You know what I mean? Versus just, stick to the grindstone and go for it. But at the same time, I also think that's my strength in being able to come up with all these different texts and being able to leave that creative door always open, and I know that I'm leaving plenty of money on the table when I make those decisions. Like I haven't really tried to scale up my operation. It's still just me making everything. I haven't really, like I've tried to have people like help me make ice cube pendants and things like that, because I use a graphite mold for those. And even then, I'm not satisfied with the final sculpting on them.
It's not you.
It's not me, and it's weird because it's a simple enough item that it could be kind of automated to a degree, or I could have someone helping me make those. But at the same time, there's something great about being invested in every single little piece I make, even if I'm making a lot of kind of like smaller pipes and this and that. I mean, I've also been really restricted by just the size of my kiln. My kiln's been small this last probably 2 years. Before I had a slightly bigger kiln to work out of so I could make bigger pieces. But lately I've just been dealing with like a really small kiln, but I've been liking that because it's allowed me to like work proportionally at a smaller size and like make sure I'm making pieces that are like kind of like just refining my shaping to be like at any size I want it to be, but realize how little you actually need to make a nice pipe, you know what I mean? And just make something that's like really dope. And also like with all the milli work, I don't need this huge kiln, it's like, all the millies I'm making are micro batch millies. You know, they're a lot of them are, you know, wigwags that get, you know, full color wigwags with no clear on either side that get imploded and then, you know, get worked down into a little nub, and then eventually I sink tons of heat into that nub and stretch it out into a cool little wigwag millie. And then the snowflake millies are similar. It's like I have a bubble, I'm drawing a snowflake on that bubble, and then I'm imploding it, and then I'm pulling that down really carefully, and I'm only getting like that, you know, this tiny little bit of millie out of it, you know, and because of my process and the stick and snap, I only use a little teeny tiny bit of millie. So it works, you know, I'm not having to get these huge chunks that I chop off or whatever. So, you know, that works for me, and I'm selling my work for enough that it's all worth it for me to be doing that. But at the same time, you know, it would be nice to have a slightly bigger kiln for kind of bigger ideas and projects that, again, you know, they live in my brain right now. Who knows if they'll make it out? You know, like this week, for instance, there's 2 different ideas I'm kind of like on now that I'm like, you know, this needs to happen. Like this has to happen. If it doesn't happen, like I'm doing a disservice to my whole thing, you know. And one of them is like double layer Blizzard tech, where, you know, like I've done a lot of pendants in Blizzard tech where it's one layer on the kind of the front, and then another layer of like millies or of, you know, wigwags and snowflakes and stuff on the back. And it's cool because you shift it around, you really see the Blizzard tech, you know, differently than just on my pieces of tubing where it's, you know, just one layer, you know, it's covered in snowflakes and wigwags, and it looks really cool, and it's got the sparkle and everything. That's great. But it's not like a double layer effect, you know. And so my next thing is to make pieces of tubing that have, you know, like one base layer of maybe even just 1 or 2 types of snowflake, and then the next layer where it's the wigwags and all this other stuff. And like, that's going to be, you know, a whole other thing, you know. And so, and that's going to be a whole other product, you know, like the beads I make of that, the pipes I make of that, the, you know, the sections of that I put into other pipes that have my existing techs in them is going to be a whole other thing. And it's just it's more of, it's not even a creative move. It's just an eventuality of like, what if you just double layered this tech, you know, like anyone can kind of do that with their techs, you know, for the most part. And so it's interesting to play with. Just, I've got enough of a playground right now. You know what I mean? I've got like all these different like ways of combining different techs that just are not, you know, it's not boring me in any way right now. And what's cool too is like I've gotten into like a bunch of cool, these little side hobbies at home and stuff. Like I've got a little grow going down in my basement right now. I've never grown before. So that's like a really fun, interesting thing. And like I've got a whole new, my whole relationship with weed right now is like totally different than it
So you obviously consume then.
Oh yeah, I totally consume. And like I've gone through 6-month tolerance breaks, you know, I've done 12 or 13 tolerance breaks since probably I was like 26 or so. So probably every year I've had either a big span of time when I've had a tolerance break. And like for me, it's just, that's just my maturing into appreciating the herb, you know. It's like this sacred thing, you know, and it just like opens up all these crazy creative ideas for me whenever I smoke, but not if I smoke every day. So like I've had to just really get a handle on it, because for me, I was abusing it, and I was just like I think there's plenty of people who can smoke every day who are like not abusing it because like they have their relationship with it and they have their focus. For me, I was just getting so obliterated and just like using it in a way where I was just like kind of using it to numb myself, you know, and that I couldn't lie to myself anymore after a certain point where I just realized like you've got to appreciate this on a different level, and you've got to be able to appreciate it on a level that you still use it, because I don't really ever want to stop, you know. But for me, what it's become has been, you know, lately I've been experimenting with once a week, and that's been like really interesting. Like, just like, because I just try to notice what happens every time, you know. Most of the time, I take a hit. You know, we're still in the pandemic here and shit. So like, and I've been really careful because, for obvious reasons. And so I just like will go home on Saturday or Sunday and like take a toke, smoke a bowl, maybe a couple bowls over the course of a couple hours, and like pretty much just stare at minerals and just have my mind blown, and like that's like been like a really fun thing to do. But then also, like, I took a dab the other day. I was like, all right, I'm gonna get high. I'm gonna like, and normally whenever I do this, I take the rest of the day off because I don't really want to associate it with working anymore.
Okay.
I've been like really truly trying to enjoy it, and not use it as like a way to like numb myself so I can work, and so like I've been like smoking, like I took a dab and like just got like, at first I thought I was gonna die because it was like I took it like I had been dabbing every day, I just like took a big old just like big old dab and just like got super blazed and got wicked paranoid about like everything, and I was just like, oh my God, like society, man, like it's crazy. Well, what is my place in all of this, and it was just like uncomfortably high, and like, like I was just like, this will pass. Like, I played some drums, had a good time. And then like it mellowed out after that. But it was the kind of thing where I was like, okay, that was too high, like that was just like a little like, because like I never got paranoid when I would smoke every day. I would just get baked and be like, cool, now to go work and like get on with my day and keep getting baked all day. Awesome. But these like every so often kind of smoking, this pattern is really interesting because I will get paranoid if I smoke too much. And it's classic like high school, the cops are behind you paranoia, like, and it's just like it's just funny to have that again at like I'm 38, it's just like I should know how to handle this shit, but it's just the tolerance thing, right? It's right. When you smoke once a week, your tolerance drops. And what's crazy is I actually feel after effects of it for the next 3 or 4 days.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Because again, it's just my tolerance is gone, and so like, especially after dabbing, like the next day, I don't want to work. I don't want to do anything. So like I've been doing this on Saturday and then taking Sunday off. Like I'll do a half day on Saturday at the studio, go home, smoke, get all blitzed, get all paranoid, have my fun. But like Sunday, I'm like, I'm like basically just like truly chilling. And it's like I'm still high. Like I'm still high on Sunday, the day after. And I'm like enjoying that day of just like truly being like the lazy stoner kind of doing that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like, just really, I don't feel like doing shit the day after I smoke, and so I don't. But I will get like creative. You know what I mean? Like I'll hang out. I might play some drums. I might like do like, a lot of times I'll do like some gardening. Like I basically built this really cool succulent garden, and I've got my ladies as well. I've got my weed plants down in the basement, and I'll rock that out. I might even like have my buddy Bradley. I might go meet up with him and play some chess, out at some like outdoor patio type situation, or maybe I'll have him over if he's comfortable or whatever. But like, or maybe I'll have another friend over and like chill with them. But it's always a chill day. And then on Monday, it's just like I feel like working again, and I'm kind of back to like sober,
Right.
So it's been a really cool thing, but like I really appreciate not like, for me, it's just not relying on being high all the time, which before I really had to. And I just, like, I've been really into sauna lately. And like, when I first got the sauna, I would get blazed as hell, and then I'd go down and do the sauna. And this is when I was smoking every day. But then like I, got into this recent tolerance break where I'm limiting it to once a week. Mm-hmm. And I think of that as still like a long-term tolerance break, because it's like really modified amount of use. And like, that's just been a really crazy, like I couldn't get into the Zen zone in the sauna because my brain would be like, I'd be stoned and I'd be like thinking of all this crazy shit, because the sauna is like a great place to like meditate kind of, but I wouldn't really meditate. I would just get in my head about like, you know, this, that, and the other thing, you know? And so it was just a really, it was kind of interfering, you know, with that kind of thing. And so I've been enjoying the meditative practice without being stoned, and really getting a little bit more of a handle on my brain and a handle on, you know, like the things I need to be doing. I think what's great about getting stoned is it's still a great creative place. And I get the urge to pick up my sketch pad and get some ideas down when I'm stoned. But when I'm kind of, you know, sober, quote unquote, like that's when I, you know, really dial into, like, it's easier for me to ship stuff when I'm sober. It's easier for me to like I hate shipping stuff when I'm baked, because when I'm baked, I'm full of ideas and I just want to be on the torch, because like for so many years I would be stoned and on the torch, and that was awesome. Right. And so it's just, you know, it's just interesting how like I've built my brain into certain modalities and certain ways of how I go about doing my craft. And for me, it's important to not be stoned on the torch now, because I actually can pay a lot more attention to what I'm doing. But at the same time, it's also, I get a lot of creativity out of getting stoned. So I can't be done with getting stoned. But like routine stuff, like shipping stuff, like I would put off for days and days and days. Like the dude would DM me and be like, yo, have you sent those beads out yet? Have you sent this thing out yet? You know? And it would be like, oh yeah, like I have to do that. That's right. You know? And so I would just be kind of too baked to like remember that, you know, or just too excited after getting baked in the morning to go to the studio and get the shit done, you know? And so it was just like a really weird thing where like a lot of parts of my business were getting kind of pushed to the side because I was having too much fun in the studio, you know? And so for me to balance it out, I've really had to try this new schedule, and it's been nice, you know? It does require a bit of like a bounce back period where I have to kind of like take another day off to like get my bearings, you know? But as far as glass goes, it's been really nice, because I feel like I've been a little bit more productive in the studio, because there's a little bit more focus on what, you know, on those little stupid things. Like, you've got to do this repair that you've been putting off for months. And like anybody who's gotten a repair from me knows I take months to get a repair done. That's why I always, you know, pro tip, hit up Mr. E Glass for repairs.
He does great repairs.
He does great repairs. He has a lathe too. I don't have a lathe. So he's able to chuck things up and have everything in place, and then do the really fine welds to not distort anything. And he is damn good at it. And so, you know, I've been sending my repairs to him because he just does a better job. He like,
that's cool, man.
Yeah. And I don't want to do the repairs. And like, that's a big thing, is I've just gotten better at listening to myself these past couple of years and not forcing myself to do these certain things. And hey, I'm at a place in my career where it's a luxury that I get, you know, a privilege that I get to have, where I have someone I can send that stuff to who's happy to do it, who, you know, does a better job at it than I do. And, you know, like, it's the same thing with selling my work. That's why I work with the shop so much, you know. Wow. I'm so happy to, you know, like, have someone who's like sharing this enthusiasm. And also a big thing is like, man, if somebody wants to like do a little dealing, like I discourage it with the shops to do a lot of dealing, but you know, if there's a collector who's in love with the piece and they're like, well, I have this much, can you meet me in the middle in some way? You know, I think they're going to feel like they're insulting the artist if they come to the artist and say that. I think with a shop, that's what the shops are there for. They're that middle person. They're not going to get like, you know, all butthurt about, you know, someone asking for a lower price. They're the dealer. Right. They're there to do the dealing, you know? And so it's a great buffer between the artist and the collector. so as not to insult the artist, the collector can still do a bit of dealing with the shop.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and I think that's a big function of why shops exist, is because it allows people to, I mean, to, you know, I do that all the time with my mineral plug. I'm always like, you know, not that anyone's making minerals and would get insulted, but, you know, with this particular guy, I know he'll take a little bit off because, you know, he'll scratch my back, I'll scratch his, and so it works out. And he's got a nice variety of minerals, and that's the other thing is like, I collect glass, I collect minerals. I like to collect a lot of different things. So I like when I can go to one place and they have a bunch of different options for me.
Right.
Versus if I just hit up one artist, I know that it's just their work I can get access to, you know, and maybe I've got, you know, a hole burning in my pocket and I want to spend a bunch of money, and, you know, I want to like get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a little bit of that. Well, that's what shops are good for. You know, I'm even like, I do trades with shops all the time. Like,
oh, really?
Oh yeah. Like if a shop has like a really dope piece, like this Pendy right here is a Yoshi Kondo, and it's one of these chameleon Akio and not Yoshi Kondo. It's Akio and Rose Rhodes. And I love Akio's chameleons, and I love Rose Rhodes dot work. And, you know, I can't afford like a Rose Rhodes like redisculator, you know. I don't have like $80,000 or $100,000, you know. It's like, which I assume those pieces are at those like mega big boy prices, you know. Like I'm not balling like that, but I am able to see something like that. You know, Stoked had this. I did like a half cash, half work trade. You know, I'm trading like, you know, this much of my glass for this little bit of their glass, but that's the value, you know. And it's like, these artists are making incredible work that that is just at a technical level that I'm straight up envious of. And
you want to have a piece of that. You want
to have a piece of that. Yeah, exactly. And it's just appreciation that goes both ways. And, you know, it's a rare item. You know, these are rare items. Like these artists are not, and similarly, same thing with me. I'm not having someone else make this because I don't really feel like I don't really want to blow my market out. You know what I mean? I do like regular drops. I drop a pretty healthy amount of pendies, this and that. But what a healthy amount of pendies for me is like 9 pendants. You know, it's not 100. You know, it's like my last drop with Burn Gallery, I did 3 hailstones, which I never make, but they were like, you like your hailstones from back in the day, can you make one of those? And those were like kind of carved on the sides with like natural kind of pre-ice cave carving. Before I was doing the ice cave texturing, I was doing just like knife cuts to make it look glaciary, you know, and it had a certain look to it. And then my regular Blizzard Tech pendants are more smooth. You know, and they got 3 of those. They got 3 of the hailstones, and then they also got 3 ice cube pendants. You know, and those are all different price points and just different pendies, really different designs. Right. You know, I'm not someone who makes. I feel like a big hustle in this game is like making one thing, and just making that one thing, and then people know you for that thing. Like what Bubbles is doing with the bonsai rigs. Like he's doing that one thing. He's doing some slight variations. It's not too much for his audience, and it throws them off. My thing is ice, but I'm doing a lot of different iterations and different, you know, ideas of that, different designs of ice, you know, that go in many different directions. And that's why I've got all these names for these different techs. And what's funny about it is like, I don't really romanticize it a lot. You know what I mean? It's like a very logical thing. It's like, well, this is Blizzard Tech. This is Blizzard Tech with Lake Ice Tech. This is this tech. And it's really just like, if you think this is beautiful, buy it. I don't need to necessarily put a huge story behind it. You know, and so that's kind of where I'm coming from. I mean, I don't want to talk your ear off, but did you have any questions or anything about in particular?
I do. Like you literally, all my questions that I had here, the mentors, the classes, everything, you have been systematically hitting them up. And I'm like, this is fucking killer. So
Great, great. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I'd say that, in closing, it really is, like you were able to appreciate earlier. It's rare that we get to exist, that each of us as an individual gets to exist in the first place.
yes,
Right.
it's a miracle, damn near. Like,
it's a miracle that we get to exist. It's crazy.
How many sperms went in there to fight for that one egg?
Oh yeah. Exactly.
And the chances, it's fucking crazy.
It's crazy. And the fact that, your dad had some game and your mom was like, okay, all right, this guy's cool. It's like all that stuff coming together. That's what make us, right? And so it's like an incredible thing that I've come to appreciate more and more as I've gotten older. And also getting to get older is like the fact that like most men don't die before they're 25 is amazing. Cause I did stupid shit when I was a guy, when I was like a young guy. Like I did so much stupid shit, including getting a DUI, you know what I mean? And so like, it's like all these different things, coalesce into a life where then you also get to make art. So it's like you get to exist, you get to, get maybe mature, right? And then also get to make art and get to make things or get to represent artists, you know what I mean? Whatever it is. All those are these amazing opportunities. And that's kind of like how I try to approach what I'm doing, and like life is not easy. It is a struggle. I mean, I think the Buddhists got it right, when they say that life is suffering. And if you want to remove that suffering, and remove wanting and desire and kind of, the suffering that all brings, that you have to do a lot of work on yourself and you have to really get present and get right here. And so like when someone looks at my work, I want them to feel present. I want them to feel like a bit of stillness, a bit of like appreciating the stillness of the ice, appreciating but also the dynamics of it too. You know what I mean? And like, I think we've got this interesting society where there's depression and there's anxiety, and depression is getting caught up in the past and anxiety is getting worried about the future. And that's not all it is. Obviously there's the genetic components, but I think there's also, those genetic components exist because we've evolved to worry about the future, and we've evolved to, in some ways, regret the past, and if you look at what I was saying about order and chaos, the past is ordered and the future is chaotic and is full of who knows what will happen. Mm-hmm. But the present moment is like just like this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing that we get to have if we notice it enough. And so like, I think like what I'm trying to express with my work is like, notice things, notice what's going on here, notice the medium of glass and how amazing it is, and just appreciate these things. I can tell you are someone who has appreciation, obviously, as
I love glass.
Yeah. So do you collect any specific artists or like, or any specific items
I basically have two head shops, man, and so that's where I get to do it. I have, locally, I have a lot of D-Rock stuff.
Oh, cool.
He's no longer blowing glass, I don't think. Things changed or whatever. Fuck, I don't know.
He's an OG. He's an OG for sure.
OG, and so like, and constantly, I only get to find people when they're here. And with Instagram, I just keep seeing this stuff, and it's just like, yeah, I just love it, man. I love. That's why I like going to my head shops, because I get to look at that art and just pull it out and just be like, how did they do this? And at 17 years mine, I'm like, how did they do this? Like, patience, the everything. It's just, it's I love it.
Well, when I think about it, it's like, you have to say, it's like, I only got here because I said no to so many other things, I said no to like at one point my buddy was offering me a lab job. He worked at a sleep study lab, and he was like, you've got a psych degree. That's basically all you need. And, you can get a job in this lab. And at one point I was like, yeah, maybe. But then, I was like, I can do this. I believe in myself. I believe I've got the kind of vision to make things out of glass. It doesn't have to be all just this icy stuff. Like, because of like that craft background I have, really what I did for many years before doing the ice thing is the way I made money wasn't just, making it, but it was also selling it. I did craft shows. Mm-hmm. So for years I would do like 25 shows a year. And it was a goddamn hustle, man.
Yes.
It was, you work all week making the stuff, and then on the weekend it's time for the show. And then
that's a hustle. Holy shit. Standing there talking to the people. You don't stop talking.
You don't. And then you go home and you're zapped, and you're like, all I did was stand around. I wasn't blowing glass today. Why am I so tired? It's like, well, you expended all your social capital talking to people all day. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, it's so crazy how I got to appreciate what shops do. Again, what shops do is doing that work of talking to people, educating them. Mm-hmm. Like that's half the job, is educate people about what they're actually looking at, because you don't, like they see a $30 price tag, they're going to think, well, this is just some $30 thing. They see a $3,000 price tag or $30,000 price tag, and now there's a conversation happening, Mm-hmm. And I think that's a kind of to the credit of the people who first, really realized that you can price pipes at high prices, and people will pay those high prices because they realize that it's something different.
And they wouldn't have right at the beginning, like you said, if you didn't have a shop there, to somebody coming in maybe buy the $30 piece and then say, okay,
right,
and then learn in there like, oh, this is all the stuff. Like you just don't go buy even a $3,000 piece right off the way. You have to fall in love with it and develop the passion. And
exactly. And you also have to see that it's valuable. And so the shops also have a big part in that, because, the shops were the ones who first kind of hit up artists and say, hey, can you make this like headpiece for my window? Mm-hmm. Like I want something really crazy in the window. I don't care if it sells, and I know that like places like Mellow Mood and Illusions and like all these kind of different like OG shops, that's like an interesting thing about this industry is like, you got these rock star glass blowers, but then you also have these rock star shops, you know Absolutely. What I mean? And so you have these shops that like, are like really going above and beyond and putting crazy work in there and like being like a museum in a way, Mm-hmm. And what's interesting too is like, I was watching this mineral show thing on YouTube, and the guy was, one of the big guys in the mineral game is this guy, Daniel Trinchillo. And he has this Fine Minerals International, store in Manhattan, where you have like really dope minerals that are like, $40,000, $50,000, like really high end stuff. And, he developed these cabinets for minerals with different light. You could plug in these different lights, and he had 5 different Kelvin temperatures that you could choose from. So if you had an aquamarine, you want to get the 6,500 Kelvin light because it's the blue light. It's that high energy stuff. Mm-hmm. If you've got a piece of wolfenite or something that's more of a red mineral, you're going to go with the lower Kelvin light that's more on the red kind of yellow side, because it's going to bring out more of that.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, exactly. It's not going to dull out those colors. And, it was the kind of thing where I was like, man, like mineral collecting has been a thing for a minute. And I do think there's a lot that the shops, that glass shops can learn from looking at other collecting industries. You know what I mean? Other places where people are collecting things and realizing like there's a way. It's so much in the presentation of it. You know, it's so much like you have to present this as a valuable thing and show that this and give it its due. And if, you know, I really hope to see different shops having, you know, a color coordinated thing where it's like these are the pieces and terps and the fiery pieces that are under the lower Kelvin lights, and these are the Chaka blue pieces that are in the high Kelvin, you know, range that really bring out those blues and the sparkles and stuff. And I think
God, I've never even thought of that till now.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like I'm always looking for overlap, interaction between these different things, because there's something about collecting things. There's something about it that is like, why do we do that? Why do we collect things of value? I mean, it's a curiosity to me, because it's not immediately apparent that it's like evolutionarily like going to make you successful or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like maybe in a way you collect all. I mean, I've thought about it. Like I'm single, you know, so I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm just collecting all this shit so that like, you know, some woman notices and is like, oh yeah, you got a lot of shit. Like, like, all right, let's get it. But you know, I don't think that's it. It's like, I'm interested in these things. You know, I'm not necessarily trying to like flaunt it all. I mean, there is the flex, right? But like, you know, I do think there's something about our intrinsic appreciation of these things.
Absolutely.
And also, you know, something I kind of touched on a little bit earlier, but which I think is very interesting, which is my approach to how I think of art, is that we don't create it, that we reveal it. And so, which I know plenty of people take issue with that, and I get it. You know, I understand the argument on the other side, which is that we do create it, it comes out of us. But at the same time, I think a good way for us to kind of take our egos out of our art, you know, because I don't feel like I'm like I get collectors who are like, oh my God, you're amazing, you know, and I'm like, I'm not. I'm just another guy. Trust me. Like, I'm totally just another guy. You know, Leonardo DiCaprio is just another guy. Any person you admire, you know, any person who you think is this great, untouchable, crazy, you know, like idol, they are just another person. And we
well, you say that, but I will argue that they are not. They have put more effort, I believe, into their craft, into their thing. Like you,
right? You
didn't put the craft and effort into you, you wouldn't be who you are. I believe that. So
yeah,
it's that
true.
craft.
It's true. But you know, it's like I'm also a guy who collects minerals. I'm also a guy who plays drums. I'm like totally like in so many ways. I'm just like I was gonna say like a dirty old man, but like you know, just like I've got like mad old man vibes. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like I totally like I love all the new shit that's going on, like with NFTs and like crypto and like all these different you know, just all this new cool shit. Like I have an Oculus. I'm into the virtual games and shit. I love that kind of shit. I embrace it because that's how my brain works. I'm about change. Mm-hmm. I actually like to see a lot of the structures that exist today change. And it's very interesting because that actually follows a formula of how an industry starts kind of from the ground up, becomes something, and then it actually becomes tyrannical. Like it becomes too, like the people at the top almost get too full of themselves, and then that creates a distaste, and then things kind of fall over. You know what I mean? So like, and then you get more back to like the good old just blowing glass to blow glass, not blowing glass to make $5,000 in an afternoon. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing is I'm careful to not let it get away from me. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like part of my balancing act with like dealing with the shops is like, I want to deliver to the shops on what I do now. They want Chaka as it is now, but I also want to evolve as an artist. So you have to find the gap between those. You know, you have to find the present moment between, you know, those two things. You know, you can't live in the past necessarily, but you also can't jump too far into the future, else no one's going to understand you. I mean, Stravinsky's Rite of Spring was a perfect piece to illustrate that, where there were like riots when he performed that piece, when he, had the orchestra perform The Rite of Spring. It pissed people off because it was so disruptive to what people thought music was, but, and I think maybe he was a little bit ahead of his time, but, when enough people do see what that new thing is and that it's interesting, they stick, they stick with you, and they're like, well, this is the new thing, and this is interesting, and this is this is a revolution, and so I see that happening in different paradigms in the pipe world of, I can see the pipe world becoming a thing where everyone just makes recyclers with millies in them, and that's going to become boring soon, but at the same time, it's not there yet. And that's still territory that people are playing with, and so that's all really important. But, getting back to what I was saying, I don't think we do create art because I've built this thing up. I've become this type of person, right? Like, these people who do incredible things, it is incredible that they've done them, but also like, it's kind of easy to be incredible when you love what you're doing. You know what I mean? And it's easy when it's your passion, and like, it's like people are just like recognizing that and throwing money at you because you have a passion and because they've recognized that like you've turned that into something sellable and marketable. But
do you wonder like that when people see that you have a passion, they want that passion because the majority of people maybe don't have passion in their lives and they crave it?
Yeah, I think everyone does crave having some type of a passion, but I think it's different. I think some people might even crave having power and that's their passion, and like I think there are different types of people. I mean, one thing I've tried to appreciate in trying to bring us back together in our really polarized time is the idea that conservatives are good at running businesses and liberals are good at starting businesses. And that for instance, that's why I see like shops and artists as working together in a good way. I'm sure there's plenty of shop owners and plenty of people who run shops who are conservative, who might even be Republican, who might be, whatever, because they're good at, like, the conservative mind is the type of mind that likes, tradition, conformity, things being the way they are, not changing things, not embracing every new little trend,
Well, they know it works, I think.
They know it works, exactly. And they are good at making it work. So they're good at running something in perpetuity and not like fucking with it and fucking it all up. You know what I mean? Like, and so those type of people are good at running businesses. And that's why you have a lot of, businessmen and people like that who are conservative. It makes sense. And then you've got the entrepreneur type, which is the starter of businesses, which is someone who sees solutions that are going to be needed in the future, can wrestle with the chaos of the future and, wrangle it into a solution and then sell people that solution. So Google, realizing that search was going to be like this huge thing that people were going to need with all this new internet technology, like, was started by liberal people, you know what I mean? And now there's this huge, this is kind of this big controversy about tech and about how tech kind of leans liberal and what the implications of that are for our body politic. And, that's a damn good thing we should all figure out, because it's true. Like, I'm not all for being a liberal. Like, I'm pretty liberal myself, but I've also
in this industry you have to be liberal. There's no way. Well, when we got into it, it was illegal.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the funny thing is I've noticed there's a lot of conservatives. I've noticed there's a lot of growers that don't just get into like kind of like conservative leaning type conspiracy theories, but a lot of growers that just kind of have kind of conservative views about like the government fucking with them, which is like totally legitimate. It's like the government fucked with weed growing forever. But the thing is, it's also, in a way, to me, it's kind of a co-opting of what liberals were saying, because liberals what liberals do is they criticize, and in a philosophical sense, getting away from American politics, but in a philosophical sense, what liberals do is they like left-leaning or liberal brain. What it does is it criticizes the existing hierarchies that make our society function, the power structures, the hierarchies of business, the way things are done. They challenge those and they criticize them, and they point out the way, like many years ago in the early 2000s with our military industrial complex, the liberals were the ones who were criticizing that. And then, of course, there were plenty of Republicans or conservatives who were like, oh, you hate your country, that's why you're criticizing it. And it's like, no, we're criticizing it because it's a problem, and we're reversing that even at the cost of being called un-American or whatever. And it's interesting because what conservatives do in a philosophical sense is they advocate for the hierarchy. They say, whoa, this is actually working for like 85% of people. You don't just want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't destroy this thing that's working for most people. You know what I mean? And these are the trade-offs we make. Like, vaccines for a long time, even before the current vaccine kind of culture we're in, for a long, there were always people who couldn't take them because they were immunocompromised, so there was always a trade-off between it always didn't work for a few people, but it worked for most people. And it also gave us herd immunity, which made it immunocompromised. So it was a technology that we said, look, this is the way forward, and this is the way we should be doing it, and this is how we should be handling infectious disease. And it's worked because, like, look at the population, And right. So that's the thing, is that's the value of conservatism, is that it holds the hierarchy in place. The value of liberalism is that it criticizes the hierarchy and says, this is how we could fix it. And the work that we all do together is being honest with each other in political games. Like, that's why we've ruined it in this country. We've ruined that process. And that's why we have what stagnation we do have, and what problems we do have in this country are, many of them are due to the polarization and the fact that we've forgotten the value we have to each other. The people who are good at running things and the people who are good at developing new things that help us continue running things, And so, as that relates to like the glass art scene, there's all these new innovations all the time. There's pearls and there's spinner caps and there's like, all, and like look at the 15 different ways there were to dab, you know what I mean? Right. It's like that's a perfect example of why, you've got all these liberals in there. That's why you have all these new innovations. But then you also have the conservatives. And I'm not saying Democrat, Republican. I'm just saying people with different ways of viewing the world, which those two ways of viewing the world are similar to the chaos and the order, the yin and the yang, even the masculine and the feminine.
And that's why they have to work together, because they see differently. That's why we have a left and right brain. Like,
exactly.
That's what's
crazy. If you only had one, like, for instance, if you only had conservative, which is this, it's so stupid to me that people are like, oh, we'll split the country up. It's like, yeah, that's
stupid.
That's so stupid. Because for one thing, in a generation, if you have kids, there's no guarantee that just because you're liberal, your kids are going to be liberal. It's actually more, it has more to do with genetics. And that's what Mother Nature does. Mother Nature makes sure your kids are going to be different from you in some ways.
Right.
They might be liberal, but they actually might be conservative, and they're going to point out things that are going to infuriate you, or they're not going to mesh with you in ways that are going to infuriate you. And you better have the love in you that you still love your kid, because like, it's not just about them being like you, and that's the thing, is that this is within families too. So it's not this just like, geographical thing. It's just, that's such a stupid thing. And so if you have just conservatives, everything's going to stagnate, and you're not going to have enough new ways of doing things that you're going to be able to adapt to the way Mother Nature likes to throw, wrenches in our gears, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have too many liberals, too many things will change. It'll just change too quickly, and you'll have so much change that you won't have any stability, And so that's why we do need to work together, and we need to respect and appreciate the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? You have to respect the fact that we've got this amazing system that has led to IQs have raised by 30 points since the early 1900s. The average sorry about that.
You're all right.
Yeah. The average person in 1910, you know, was like 70 IQ or 85 IQ. It's like to like a person today, you know. So that's incredible, and that's the you know, that's because of public schools and because of, you know, all these incredible things we've had, and you know, it's like, and then but also because of that, people, because of public schools, people have certain ways of thinking that, you know, might be more like a factory, you know, and not because it's based on a factory, you know, and so it's good because people have come along and said, hey, let's reform education, let's reform this, let's reform that, and those are all very interesting, you know, those are all problems that got revealed to us because we tried it one way and we saw how it didn't work that way. But getting back to what I was saying about how I don't think we create art. You see, I just think that I actually don't think I'm special. I think maybe what I've done is I've made myself special, right? Like,
absolutely.
American culture, we do that. We say, oh, you're special. You don't need to do anything else. You're special. Just, you were born in America. You're special. And it's true. That is true.
That was lucky.
Yeah, it's lucky. Exactly. But then there's also, you know, like Japanese culture. You're not special. You have to bring honor to your family by doing something incredible. And I think that speaks to a lot of why in Japanese culture, you have individuals who do things at insanely high levels, because the pressures in that culture, the pressure is insane to achieve and make yourself, differentiate yourself. Now that's also not great because there's like, you know, the suicide rate and a number of different things that are going on in Japanese culture that are problematic. But it stands in stark contrast to the problem we have here, where we're all we kind of do this privileged and entitled thing where we think we're special just for breathing oxygen, you know, where it's like, no, like you have to do something. You have to go out and make something of yourself, you know, and not just accept yourself for who you are, but think of yourself as something that could be continually worked on, you know? And so it's not like a tabula rasa. It's not a blank slate. We have certain features like that liberal or conservative mind. That's something you're born with. That's something you kind of, you know, like there's plenty of people who grow up in the Midwest, middle of nowhere, who like do not feel at home because everyone around them is just like, well, this is how it's done. And this is, you know, a more conservative culture. And then they move to Hollywood and they feel at home because, you know, that their creative type could blossom out there. Maybe they're into theater, maybe they're gay, maybe whatever. And they go to a place like Hollywood or any of the coasts and they realize, oh, this is a more liberal culture where the arts are much more kind of, you know, I guess appreciated or just kind of engendered in the culture. And so it's just really interesting to see how, you know, I think because we have those things in us, right, genetically, and because we realize that that's very strong, that like you can try to nurture your way out of that, but nature always comes back. Now nature loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger. Well, you know, if you've still got that loaded gun and your environment hasn't yet pulled that trigger, you know, you need to move somewhere where you're going to feel like, you know, and of course that also leads to more polarization, but you know, it's part of, you know, people are going to people. And when you have a free country, right, and people freely can move about with free association, that's, you know, polarization is also kind of inevitable in a way. So it's kind of a catch-22 in a way. It's interesting, but you know, understanding that got me to understand that if we are the product of like an ancestral line of knowledge and like of basically tons of people, you know, fucking and killing and fighting and creating and doing all these incredible things through millennia to get to us, that maybe we have a bit of that in us, you know, and maybe we are the product of something way older and way more refined and ancestral than we can even begin to appreciate with just, I mean, we have the English language, we have these ways of thinking, but the English language cannot completely capture our entire ancestral experience because we didn't even speak English. Our ancestors didn't speak, you know, it's like they thought of the world in a completely different ways because their language was different. And
Right.
So it's so interesting. So when I think of art, I just don't accept that it is like me. You know what I mean? I think about it as like, this is me and all of my ancestors speaking through me. And so I think of it as much more of a process of that I am uncovering and revealing something you can do with the medium. And so like when I make a certain rig or when I make an ice cube pendant or something, I'm drawing on objects I already know exist, but I'm also making something that's like from within, but it's not from like me as like this singular person. It's like from my genetic, whatever the hell makes me up, and like, so I kind of remove my ego from it in that way of being like, I didn't create this. I just stood by and I dug it up out of my unconscious. And now it's here for you to see. But like, we're all participants in that process, so for me, artistic creation isn't creation, it's revelation. It's artistic revelation. And that if you do work where you're really honest with yourself and you just notice and observe yourself, you will reveal something. And if you get out of your own way, I mean, that's a big part of making art, is like, get out of your own way and let it come out, And so like that'll give you something to chew on, because it's like, I still don't agree on that. I still want, like, I think it's my ego, but I still want to believe that I create the art that I make. But at the same time, the type of work that I make, especially because it has a very logical back, and because it's very, logic versus emotion is kind of like masculine versus feminine.
Yeah.
And like logic is ordered and it is rational, and all this stuff. It's dispassionate. Whereas emotion is like kind of fly by the seat of your pants, like emotional, passionate, fiery, and it's fiery, right? Whereas logic is cold and icy, and it is, ordered. And so order chaos thing, it's the masculine feminine thing, it's the emotion logic thing. And, my work has, I think, more of the side of, at least the work you see in the shop on the shelf is this ordered icy thing it's made out of glass. I mean, everything in your shop is made out of glass. It's not going to change shape all of a sudden, right? It's not going to decide to emotionally, cry or do this thing and just, but made in the flame, right? And the fire is, it's representative of passion and of emotion.
That's pretty cool.
And it cracks in the fire. Yeah, man. It's like a really cool thing that I kind of realized when I was making this. I was like, this is so funny because I make out of fire. And it's kind of got everything for me in that. That's why I love what I do so much, is because it's got all that. But it's like, I also realized that like, I'm just like this vessel, you know what I mean? That's like a big thing, is like the artist as a vessel for something speaking from within, coming out, And for me, I've just kind of wrestled with that, that masculine and feminine and the logic and the emotion and all that kind of stuff my whole life. And just being a thinker about that stuff and totally thinking way too much about it, for sure. Getting to these kind of revelations and realizing that these are revelations. These are not things that I thought up. Like, and I've got a good example. Like, you didn't discover, like, when the music you like, you didn't decide to like it. You found out that it vibed with you. You found out that you liked it. You found meaning in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why people say that people don't say like, I created meaning in this. You know, it's like, no, I found meaning in this.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Bubbles put up a thing the other day, and we were kind of going at it. You know, he's interesting because it seems like he's a big thinker and noticer as well.
For sure. And that's what's really neat. Like, I got to talk to him just 2 days ago, and here I am talking to you, and it's just it's fucking cool, man.
Yeah, it's a cool energy, right? And he was saying like, you know, I think we just kind of egocentrically, you know, create meaning, and then, you know, we live in that meaning. And I think you know, what he was pointing at was kind of the idea of kind of almost religiosity, that like we kind of create these religious structures and we say, well, this is the meaning, you know, and to a degree I can see on the surface that being true. But there's also this funny thing happening where our genetics spring up and tell us things and reflect out of us, and that is not created. That's not something we create. It's something that we reveal and show if we're paying attention. And I think there's plenty of people who are suffering because they haven't listened to themselves, and they're trying to be something that they're not. You know, they see someone else being something, they think, oh, I'm going to be like that. And it's like, yeah, you could try that for a bit, but you also have a nature to you. And because you have a nature to you, you automatically like certain things just because you like them, just because that's how your genetics are playing out. That's what you're drawn to. You don't draw yourself to it. You are drawn to it, you know? And so it's like, for me, that's a very interesting, there's something there, and there's something to the fact that all these religions share, you know, the ideas of what's meaningful, and the idea of helping other people and reducing suffering and having love and all that kind of stuff, and of people having different roles in society. I mean, in this culture, we want to say, I can be whatever I want, I can do whatever I want. But, you know, I think that's a romantic idea. I don't think when it actually plays out, it's true. I think
I can't be a fucking basketball player. You know, I can't do it.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, I'm not really like, I'm not a car guy. Like, I drive a goddamn Corolla. I wish that, you know, my license plate says icy. I think that would be way better on like a white Audi, you know, but or a nice silver Audi, you know, that I would look fly in that. But I drive a fucking Corolla. Like, I don't care about cars, you know. I'm not super mechanically inclined, you know what I mean? But I'm definitely of that logical brain that goes there, but I just don't go that far with it, you know. It's just, I'm way into music. I'm just all about music, you know. And what's funny about me is like, I've got a little bit of hippie in me, and a little bit of like, you know, like just kind of like, you know, the button-up shirt guy in me as well, you know. And so like, that's been like an interesting, like, again, you know, similar to all these kind of binaries and these kind of different yin and yang type of, you know, things that kind of tussle and dance with each other. Is like I definitely grew up like a hippie, and like, or like, you know, was that hippie guy in like high school. Like, I was a hippie before I smoked weed, basically, you know what I mean? And like was super into like Bob Marley and all this stuff, and then got really into like metal, and I was kind of like a metalhead hippie for a while. And then, you know, as I've grown up, just like, you know, grown out of that stuff a bit, and just kind of like embraced the more professional side of myself, I guess I could call it, you know. And what's interesting about that is my father was a physician, you know, he was a surgeon, and he was just a very professional guy, you know. But my mother was like crazy, and was like, you know, would like play guitar and sing in all these crazy voices, and was like a crazy funny person, and like two totally obviously like masculine and feminine energies, you know. Right. And I look at my cousins, like when I travel down to Chile, that's where my father and mother are from. You know, when I travel down to Chile, I notice the cousins that are all on my father's side of the family tend to be engineers, lawyers, and doctors. And the cousins on my mother's side of the family tend to be like, one of them's like a skateboarder and a drummer. Another one is like an actor, you know what I mean? Like another one, like they're all artists basically, you know. One of them, you know, she paints, you know, she's a visual artist, you know, and so it's like very apparent to me that I got a little bit of both of those, and that one thing I do in my career is like manage both of those, you know, and like and bring, like, have the business sense to not change things up too much, right? And have enough that the collectors can see this is his thing, this is what he does, you know, that's that. But then also have the artist side of it, that I can change it a lot. And it's again, it's kind of that liberal conservative kind of thing where it's like I see a little bit of both of those in me. I can see where conservatives can have a good point about don't change everything all the time constantly, but I can also see the obvious change that we need, especially in this culture, you know, in this society, that we need to come about, and we need to create, and we need to reveal, you know, that is what we're going to use to be able to deal with the future coming at us, you know, as it does. And so it's very interesting to me, just like, you know, almost feeling like philosophically or even politically homeless, because I don't just wholesale agree with one side or the other. You know what I mean? Like it's a weird thing, because I will talk with like my liberal buddy about a lot of stuff going on, you know, obviously all the relevant cultural stuff happening, and he'll be like, man, like, you know, you're saying this one thing about, you know, how we need to look more carefully at this thing because maybe it's not all due to just gender discrimination or just racial discrimination, but then you're also acknowledging that there's racial discrimination there, and I don't know what to make of it. And I'm like, well, this is what happens when you, like, I'm just trying to be honest with myself about these issues, and I really don't think that either side like really just has it figured out.
Fuck
you
no.
know, it just doesn't, you know. And I'm seeing in our microcosm of the glass culture, the pipe culture, growing culture, that everyone is represented there. Actually, like you know, you say where it's very, you almost can't, you know, not be liberal in this culture, and I agree. But also, that doesn't mean there aren't plenty of conservative type people in the glass pipe world. You know, especially
Absolutely.
with collectors too. You know, there's a lot of collectors that are, you know, made their money running a business, you know, and are much more of that kind of conservative type brain. They might even vote Democrat, but their sensibility about this stuff might be much more like, hey, let's not change everything so quickly. Let's respect some of the old ways. Let's respect things like tradition and traditional lifestyles and things like that. And, you know, to me, I think, yeah, we don't need to throw all that out. I think what we need to do is include it all. You know,
Absolutely.
I think the way forward is we're building a larger and larger umbrella to have everyone be included. And I think that's also what's really great about the pipe world is like every different pipe artist, every different glass artist is doing it in 10 different ways. You know, they each have their own lane. You know, I sometimes worry, I'm like, oh, maybe I should, you know, be doing more sculpture, or maybe I should be making a lot more recyclers because that's like the hot thing. But then I just kind of like look inward and I think about it, and I say, I try to notice and observe what's happening. And I say, no, you know, that's for those people. And you know what? If someone wants a recycler from me, I do make them here and there. But if someone wants a really balled out recycler, I'm going to work with JFL. I'm going to work with, I did a collab
That's
with
a great point.
You know, like that's part of how we can make that happen for people, right? Is like collaboration is like a huge, great avenue for people to see, someone last night hit me up and they're like, I'd love to see a Rhino collab. And I was like, I'm sure we can get there because I've talked to, Ryan about it, and maybe we can make it happen, and it's the type of thing where I think there's room for everyone, and I think this is, the pipe world is like a great place where we can see that we all need each other, and we can see that we can reduce the polarization by not really squabbling about it, but saying like, hey, we all think weed is tight. We all think pipes are tight. You know what I mean? Like that's something great that we can start on.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to have these like crazy conversations with each other. And like, I have no hate for, you know, anyone who's, I think it's irresponsible for some of these people in Instagram, some of these artists to speak. I think a lot of them are speaking beyond their expertise when they try to talk about, oh, you know, this, you know, I don't really agree with this thing or that thing about the vaccine, or I think this, you know, whatever they think about Trump or they think about Biden or whatever. It's just like, I think a lot of them are just, they're just like doing the thing that we do as Americans, which is like, I have an opinion and I'm special and you need to hear it, you know? And it's just like,
Right.
that's great. But everyone's got an opinion. They're like assholes, you know, like everyone's got one, you know? And it's just like, you know,
But the
you're not
beauty
special.
is, in this country, we can share those opinions, and
Right,
somebody can call you out on it. You know, you can't,
right,
as much as people will say this, you can't do that in China. You can't have an opinion.
right. Right.
And
There's that, but there's, you know, but there's also the, like, the thing is that, like, I think we've weaponized it, or maybe we've, I think there's something we're doing where we're taking so much advantage of the fact that we're kind of free. Like, you're also free to just like read about like crystals and astrology and think that that's what's running your life, you know? And it's like, no, you're running your life. Like you have part in this, you know? And that's the thing is, like, I see people who believe in things that almost, I feel like they believe in them because it gives them an excuse. It gives them an out. It gives them this way of being like, huh, that was just the universe. And it's like, yeah, if I said my DUI was just the universe, I'd probably still be drinking
right.
and endangering people, you know, and that's where it becomes dangerous. And so, like, for me, I do think we need to get to a place where we respect, you know, we respect things like expertise. You know, even though experts have been wrong about things before, it's better than nothing. You know, it's better than throwing darts at a wall. And, you know, it's like, it's just interesting how we're entering an interesting place in our culture and in our world. And I always wonder about how pipes relate to that, you know, and just how we're reaching a what's known as a postmodern place where no one truth is really the truth. And I don't happen to believe this. I just think that's where we're kind of going as a culture, where anything you want to believe is valid, you know, and I don't really agree with that. Like because then you can justify terrible things, you know, if you just believe that anything, you know, is valid. And so it's just really interesting to me how who's really trying to wrestle with the truth truly, you know, and who is playing a game where, you know, they're kind of like, you know, well, I'm free to just, you know, I'm free to believe this and I don't have to listen to you about it. And it's like, you don't, but you might be better served if you do engage in more noticing and more observing versus, you know, I think a lot of us are engaging in telling ourselves that we're right, telling ourselves that of other people, how could they, you know, versus, you know, kind of truly really getting honest with ourselves and noticing what's happening and saying, what's better, you know, that we come together and find common solutions, or that we kind of fall apart and disintegrate into like rabid individualization where, you know, the thing is that collective structures, you know, like, I'm no communist, but I do think it's interesting that collective structures are where technology keeps leading us. You know, the internet is one of the most collective technologies that we've come up with, and it's a new one, and it's got there's a lot of shitty things happening because of the internet, for sure. But there's also a lot of amazing things like this conversation right here, you know what I mean? And for instance, online sales. I mean, online sales in 2020 were insane. I'm sure you saw it on your business end, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think you know, the pandemic pushed people into finalizing their online footprint and pushed people into finally, you know, okay, you need to set up your damn website because you're just not going to sell anything otherwise unless you set up a website, because people aren't going to physical stores. And, you know, it really, like, I know that what I did was I got my shipping game down with the pandemic. I was going to the post office and having them enter all the shit in, and it took forever. Now I go on my shipping portal, I print out the labels, I pay for it on PayPal, and I just drop off a bunch of packages at the post office. And it's crazy to think that it took me till 2019 to do that, or till the end of 2019, beginning of 2020 to do that. But that's what it took. It was like, well, going to the post office, in the very beginning of the pandemic, nobody knew what was up and down.
Yeah.
So it was like, do I even leave my house? And it was like, well, if maybe going to the post office is like a bad idea because there's people there. Well, you can do these pickups. So I was like leaving stuff on my front porch and thanking the mailman that he was still doing his job, and it was like, we're going to get through this. We have the structures to do that. We have the technology to do that. And again, to my point before, these technologies seem to favor collectivism.
Or here's a question, right? Then, so we did all this stuff and it creates this collection. Did this happen or naturally was it used to push that collective even further? Because there's no doubt, once that pandemic happened, you got pushed forward, I got pushed forward, the whole world just got pushed forward into this new thing.
Well, that's how you view it. And that might be because of the way your perspective works, and that
Absolutely.
For me, that's how my perspective works too. I was like, this is going to push us forward. This is a chance to embrace new technologies like Zoom and things like that. I think a lot of people struggled with it. People who weren't good with change, people who were, for instance, maybe people who was good at running a business wasn't necessarily good at adopting the new technologies because they're just used to like sitting at their shop, waiting for a customer to come in, making a few sales and getting by that way, and I think it's interesting how there were definitely winners and losers. And I think there were, I'm really glad that governmental structures came in, cut people checks, gave us our money back, and, or in a lot of ways redistributed that money to people who needed it to get by. Because at the end of the day, we're like this 68% consumer economy. And so buying stuff is like how we keep being an economy. And
Absolutely.
Consumption is just like such a huge part of what we do as Americans. And I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, because I think there's something very democratic about that. And I think there's actually, if you want to depolarize, you want to realize that the guy you're buying weed from, he's a Republican. You know what I mean? He's a conservative. He doesn't want the government treading on him. And he's got like a totally different view than maybe I have. But you know what? I like the weed he grows, and he does a damn good job at it. And I'm not going to sit here and not make friends with him just because he has a different viewpoint. So there's something very like, I think of it as like economic democracy, where us buying and trading and selling with each other. That's also why I love the collecting, because I've met all these people through collecting that are different people than me. They're not they don't just agree with all of the stuff I say, and so that's what I think is so cool about, that's like what energizes me to make stuff in my studio, is that like I'm engaging in commerce. I'm engaging in like this democratic like process in a lot of ways. And it's like in democratic in so many ways, not just that like people are voting my work up and down by buying or not buying it, but also that people are voting shops up and down, and people are voting styles up and down. Some people are not into tubes. They like characters, and everything they buy is a cool little character. Like they've got a Lurk the World, and then they've got an Elbow, and then they've got maybe one of my stupid little penguins, and it's like, it's really interesting how like each of those is becoming a niche in the glass world, and that's like super fascinating too, how like you've got these like sovereignty drops and like Mobius and, Toro and all these different companies. And they are like being hyped like crazy. It's like this hype beast thing where it's like, we got the Sov drop, like get it before it's gone, and those collectors are all about that. And that's a type of collector, like a hype beast type collector, versus collectors who might be more into the characters, and they don't give a shit about scientific glass. They want this other thing. And that's a really interesting thing that I'm noticing is it's not just a hierarchy of who's the best glassblower. It's who makes the best character, who makes the best penguin, who makes the best millies, who makes the best recycler, who makes the best, fume work, and so what we're doing is we're doing what always happens whenever an industry emerges, which is we're differentiating down into subspecialties, and all those subspecialties are filling the needs of all these collectors. And what's great is when you collab, you can make these dream pieces that are like have the best dot work made by the best recycler person with the best dot stack work. You know what I mean? Like that Yoshi Rose Rhodes Yushin piece that Glass Game Strong just posted the other day was like, wow, maybe I'll mortgage my house because I kind of want that thing, like it was just like, so it's just like, those pieces are very special because they represent the tip top. They represent the top of the hierarchy, the top of the people who are making the best type of each of those types of things and putting it into one very special object, and that's like that's a big part of this is just the fact that we're creating all these subspecialties and that there's a little something for everyone, right? And that there's a lot of different types of stoners, and that's the other thing is like, we're just one, like the pipe market is one subspecialty of stonerdom, of all of stonerdom, right? Because there's people who just like smoking blunts, right? There's people who just like joints and blunts. Maybe they'll smoke a pipe here and there. And then there's people who just like vaping, you know what I mean? Just like hitting a volcano or something like that. Or like, they don't even like that, like, yeah, like they
it's
like,
crazy.
It's just interesting to see all the different styles.
And you change throughout stuff as well. Like you just mentioned blunt smokers. That's how I grew up smoking blunts.
Right.
17 years ago, vaporizers was for me. And within the last like month, I'm back to blunts again. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, man. Right. Yeah. It's just like you're just feeling that vibe. And like I was dabbing a couple months back. I was dabbing and I was liking just dabbing because it was like productive for me. It allowed me to get through my day like in a productive way. Now, I mean, I dabbed the other day, but that got me all paranoid. So like, I think I might just go back to flower, because, and I'm growing a nice, healthy little crop in my basement. And, I am going to, I'm going to cure that. I'm going to dry it and cure it with attention and care. And I'm going to really enjoy smoking it and probably like a nug a week, so I'm probably going to give a bunch away to my friends and all this stuff. But it's just like, man, what a great country to live in. What a great community to get to enjoy all of this prosperity and all of this knowledge about how to grow, how to blow glass, all these amazing things. It's just something I don't want to burn down anytime soon. You know what I mean? Like, and it's really like, and it's almost like I'm feverishly making cool pieces so that people have a reason to keep this going. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like part of my art is like just making cool things so that people realize we live in a cool place. You know what I mean? And like that's part of the message, and so it's really interesting, man. And I think like, man, what a ride, It's like whenever I do any of these trade shows, it's just so awesome to connect with everybody. It's so cool to see where everyone's at. I feel like.
Will you be at Glass Vegas here?
Yeah, I'm not going to be there this year. I'm going to be sponsoring parts of it. I just wanted to help them out. So okay. I told Amy I was going to hook her up with, I was going to do like $1,000 sponsorship, just because they've been really good to me. Amy's always been awesome. She's always, they're like real true supporters of the industry in that they do the work, the legwork of going to all these events, like Amy and Sky from Glass Vegas were both at, Pipe Classic. Amy's been at all these different melts. Melt is a blast. I mean, if you get the chance to,
I need to go there.
dude, it's so much fun. So Melt is awesome, and then the Melt meetup that Stokes puts on every year, that's really awesome. And so like all these events, like I always see, people like Amy from Glass Vegas, and just a lot of like certain. I mean, those are East Coast events for sure, but Glass Vegas is a West Coast thing, and like then I see Zach and Charlie from Stoked and Tasha, and then I see Josh and Kevin from Melt at Glass Vegas, so like we're all going to each other's events, you know what I mean? And it's just like this really unique community, and I'm convinced that it includes a little bit of every bit of America, you know what I mean? Like it obviously it's heavily biased towards stoners, but at the same time you meet all sorts of interesting people, and for better or worse, I mean, a couple of years ago when Age happened and Mr. Smokes kind of bought the rights to be the big dude at Age, he was an interesting guy, and I don't think he was necessarily loved by the community as this like type of character or whatever, but like it was interesting to see like someone of his level of wealth, someone who has over $100 million, like get down and like collect glass and like check out the glass scene, you know what I mean? Like it was interesting, you know what I mean? And I think it also, also on the other side of things, it left a lot of, bad taste in a lot of shops' mouth, because AGE was like pulling some favoritism and like doing some interesting things. So the politics were kind of interesting there, but, Glass Vegas crept up in the kind of the aftermath of that and didn't play this favorites bullshit, and just wanted to provide a space for people to show their work, and to be a highly organized show that made it easy for everyone to load in, show their work, have a good time, and load
without
out.
Getting raped by the union too.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotta throw it out there. You go to these other trade shows.
Yeah, man.
And you're telling me I can't carry my own shit in? That's crazy.
I know. It's funny because it's like I'm pretty pro-union, but I will say that my own on-the-ground experience when I did not just those glass, the glass pipe trade shows, but also when I used to do craft shows, you'd have these union halls, and man, the rules about, you can't touch your work, you can't plug in at your thing, you have to pay to plug in and do the, and it was kind of it was like, there needs to be a little bit of a middle ground here, of what works for people, but at the other, on the other side of it, I kind of get under, protecting these workers and that kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. It's a tough thing, right?
Yeah, my background is, went to school, did whatever, and I didn't want to go to school because I was scared. I didn't know what an electrical engineer did or something. So I became an electrician, a union electrician. Boy, they pounded into USA, fuck the rest of the world. Then you start looking into it. Damn, man, you're hustling me. I'm paying all this shit into this health fund for me, the dues. Then I'm here, I'm getting paid the same as this guy who does half the amount of work does, and then it's half the quality. There's this, while we're equal, we're not. So at the beginning it was there, and so I've had the union side in me, and I've had the entrepreneur side.
Right.
There's a nice middle. Socialism, you need it in a society, but capitalism, you need it too. Just like the Democrats.
Well, that's
and
what
the
I was.
Republicans.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. Is that I'm pro-capitalism because you don't get nice pipes without capitalism.
No,
they're not making you don't have the freedom to just do it's kind of insane when you think about all the glass shops that are not following any OSHA standards and are just some kid in a garage that might burn down. And, that's kind of the risk of entrepreneurialism in a way. It's like people do risky, weird shit in their garages, and it's not good because, you could burn the neighborhood down, but at the same time, a lot of people get their start that way. And if you had to go through some type of a union thing, or, you had to like
You'd
pay all
stop
these
it.
dues, it would disincentivize a lot of people from that. I mean, again, I'm running my own business, so I'm on that entrepreneur side of it as well. But, I'm also like, I mean, I think we're very far from any type of socialism in this country. I think, when people say democratic socialist, what they really mean is they just want like a large government that is capable of paying for, people's health care and things like that to do that, and that there's a way to figure that out, and that we don't have to act like it's this toxic idea, that we can at least try to figure it out. And what's really interesting is it's funny because like Obamacare is actually it was a Republican idea, and it only actually serves
companies.
It serves insurance companies, right? And so it's mind-boggling, because it's like I mean, in a way, he kind of played the Republicans, because he kind of is like, I'm going to give you your bill, what you guys actually want, and then I'm going to watch you rally against it because you don't want to see me have any victories. And to the people who are paying attention, it's going to show how ridiculous everything is. And I kind of credit Obama in a weird kind of like, he kind of did a little bit of a bait and switch there with the Republicans, where he's like, all right, I'm going to try to push healthcare. And they're like, socialism. And then he's like, I'm going to give you your plan. And they're like, socialism. And it's like, well, you can't say that anymore, because I'm doing exactly what you guys want, which is keeping the damn insurance company syndicate going, which is like a mafia that's just
which
like
is bullshit. Like, if they
totally
really wanted to help, this healthcare insurance bullshit, that's for the top.
I'm paying out the ass, dude. I'm paying out the ass. It's just like, I don't get benefits. I'm an independent glass blower. I pay out the ass. It should be a
healthcare system. And if they want to start it off small. Give everybody, start it off.
Like free cleanings. The thing is, Scandinavia, Denmark, all these places, they're not really like socialist. It's just like
they're capitalism.
It's enlightened capitalism.
Right.
Yeah, it's enlightened capitalism. And exactly, it's like, you want a good society, pay for it. And that's it. And that's all it is. And put in the structures and the oversight so that people don't come in and blood suck it. And I actually have the same like rant about taxes, because not that I don't want to pay them. I'm actually really happy to pay them. I just don't want there to be H&R Block or Intuit.
What a fucking joke, man! They're stealing.
This whole industry that is built around the fact that taxes are complex, and only exists because they made taxes and they lobbied for our taxes to be complex. I have to pay this accountant like $700 to do my taxes every year.
And they still don't know shit. They still don't.
He does, because I pay well. But
I've paid people that tell me this stuff, and 3 years down the road, the government's like, you can't do this, and the other tax person's like this. So it's there's too much.
And we could simplify
consumption tax.
We could have like a 22% rate that everyone pays.
Or why not a consumption tax?
Or a consumption tax. Sure, there's a lot of ways of doing it, and that's the thing. That's the thing is, there are
consumption tax is so easy. We already have the system to put it in there and collect taxes.
Right.
Don't put it on food, high food, luxury things. Everybody gets to choose. You get to see what you're paying taxes.
But then the thing is, I sell less pipes, So so that's the other side of it. Is like, it was funny because Trump did the tariffs on a lot of Chinese goods.
That was stupid too.
Oh, I thought it was so stupid. But the thing is, one of the reasons I thought it's stupid is because it's not conservative to get the government involved in trade.
No,
that's just on a principled way. You don't do that. But what was interesting to me is, I'm pretty sure, and you might actually have a better idea about this, because you may have seen it. I think a lot of it was actually on pipes coming from China, and I think it actually helped a lot of American blowers. And I don't want to admit that, because I'm not a Trump guy, and I don't want to admit that he had his successes. But I thought it was interesting, because it's the kind of thing where, like, wherever you fall, these people put in these weird policies, and it jacked up the price of like all these things. It screwed farmers and all this stuff, and it was actually a bad policy for our economy overall. But I think for the pipe industry, it actually protected a lot of American production workers. And I know I can tell in your face you don't want that to be true, but
no, I don't think it is.
Yeah,
I just don't.
I wonder about it. I wonder about it just because I know that all those tariffs did raise. Some of them were applied to like paraphernalia.
But you're talking about. So the thing is, you're talking about even if it's 20%. So if it costs 100 in the U.S., it's 100, but they're bringing it in from China for $1. So now it's $1.20. It didn't do anything.
So it's negligible because
so who made money? Right. Somebody in the business sector up here who is getting the money from the tariffs.
Right. Well, the government. Yeah, the government's getting the money, and hopefully they're not just giving it to Lockheed Martin. And that's the thing is like it's a whole screwed up system, and that's the thing is like those are the finer points where I don't appreciate that we get screwed in a lot of ways, but at the same time, we are I also think I'm really lucky because I have clean running water. I've got, I do have top of the line medical care, all these great things. And I think that there's ways of coming in between it. And that's the thing is like, in our glass culture kind of industry right now, there are so many people who are putting out messages that are very much, I'm 16 and this is deep to me, and it's just like, bro,
you're 16.
No, no, you're 16, or maybe you're 30 and you're saying something a 16-year-old would say because you haven't just grown and it's just, to me, it's all about appreciating complexity, appreciating how goddamn complex this world is. Again, I don't want to admit that there are things that Trump maybe did or maybe that happened under him, right? That he didn't even really do, but that happened under him that were very good that happened. I don't want to admit that, but there are some things that are like that. Some things you can point to. I think overall it was a total train wreck, but the thing is it's just that's why I can still have a conversation with a hardened conservative, you know what I mean? Because I think I've maybe worked on myself to have the maturity to admit that things are complex, you know what I mean? And that we're in this really complex world, and that's a good thing. You know what I mean? That kind of it's kind of like the nobody cares thing. It's like, you could see nobody cares as a bad thing and be like, oh, nobody cares, but then you could also be like, nobody cares. Go do your thing and make yourself matter. You know what I mean? Or show in you, reveal inside you what matters, and that's what artists do. And that's kind of what gets me out of bed in the morning is this idea that I can go into my studio and make a magical thing happen. I can take something that is kind of just nothing. It's just silica, earthen materials, ceramic materials, and I can manipulate it in the flame, and I can turn it into something very, very valuable and meaningful to people, right. And that we get to do that in this country, I take regular trips to Chile every couple of years, to visit family and stuff. And to really, I mean, I end up taking those trips in February or so when it's summer down there, and when all my cousins are on their vacations, and man, it is interesting because there's a difference, it's a country that's doing very well. It's not without its problems. It's got still plenty of problems with poor people, with, just inequality, with, there is a level of kind of European versus indigenous type of racism down there. It's not like it is up here, it's not like it is in South Africa or Brazil or other places where there's even more inequality, but it's got its problems. But it also has, a lot of great things because of capitalism and because of the prosperity that's brought to all the people in that country. And it's just such an interesting thing to compare to this country. Obviously there's places you can't compare it because population differences, because there's 16 million or so people in Chile, so it's pretty small country, but it's so interesting because of that, because they have such a community, and because the church is really big down there. There's all these Catholics, and so it's just really interesting to get a different viewpoint and different perspective from going down there. and realized that, man, our politics up here, for instance, are just so, like, we've just shifted way to the right in our politics, where people like you and I that are kind of like, maybe that would be seeming like liberal or whatever, are still, we still get a lot of the right wing, maybe anti-union arguments or this type of stuff, not just through our experience, but because the conversation in this country has really shifted to the right. And what's funny is I've seen other people claim otherwise, but all you have to do is go to another country and see how they talk about politics and what kind of policies are are being proposed. And what's also interesting is, as that relates to glass culture, is they're in like the early 2000s as far as what techniques people are doing, where the cannabis culture is, like they're seeing, they're getting a lot of the kind of culture of what we do up here because they're seeing it on Instagram and stuff. They're seeing people dab, they're learning how to extract, all that kind of stuff. But you can't just import another culture wholesale. You know what I mean? Part of it is that culture. There are things that people in that country like to do. Mm-hmm. So people are just starting to appreciate glass pipes because of the disposable income people have, because of the fact that the cannabis culture is going from everyone just smoking joints and blunts to smoking out of nice pipes. Like I know a guy down there who basically is like a China reseller. You know what I mean? And he had me in his shop and showed me around and stuff. And like, he's a really nice guy. But he is, he's a China reseller and whatever, you got to make ends meet. That's every, pretty much every shop in the industry has to, work in that paradigm to some degree. Mm-hmm. And it was just interesting because he realized, he's like, I'm the wholesale guy. I'm the guy you buy the cheap pipe from. But my buddy over here, Franco, Chilean glass, he was the guy you bought the headies from. So they even already had like their high end and their low end guys, who like were the people you went to and like who supply different head shops and who kind of like clued the head shops into what the hell is going on with the culture in America, where it's so much more just like sped up and where everyone's innovating. And again, mm-hmm. It's another example of American culture being, exported. We import goods and we export culture, and it's just so interesting to see that happen and to be a part of it. Every one of these American glass blowers, they might not realize it, but they're a part of this, mm-hmm. Culture of innovation. And, it's like, if you have that kind of, again, if you look into yourself and you see that you're that type of person that can, be creative, because not everyone's necessary. I kind of struggle with this, but I don't know if everyone is necessarily creative or not. I think that there's a lot of people, like, for instance, a lot of production people who like are like happy, like not stepping out of that box, you know mm-hmm. what I mean? And just like doing production and like filling a need, and creating solutions for shops that don't want to buy China, but can't find like affordable, mm-hmm. just like a good American fumed spoon, and it's like, there is a way to fill that gap. But I think that individuals who are engaging in a different, who find themselves trying to be creative should realize that, like, look, the American market isn't where it ends. The Chilean market is also a whole market where cannabis mm-hmm. there's a very lax cannabis laws. It's very good for cannabis, and that, if you want to take a cool exotic vacation in a really cool country that is very, friendly to American tourism, Chile is a great place to go. It's not like super cheap or anything like that. It's not going to be like Southeast Asia or something where like $1 is going to go super far. But it's a little cheaper and it's like a lot of fun. And also it's a different cannabis culture all its mm-hmm. own. And same thing with Spain, same thing with a lot of parts of Europe now. That's mm-hmm. starting to open up, and so like I can see myself in the next couple of years, like I am dying to go to Europe and check it out, and once I get my second shot, I'm going to be, all about like planning these trips out and making it happen. And I've got my 18-month booked out, but a lot of that I have factored in that time of I'm going to need 2 weeks to dick around doing this or that. I'm going to need some time to be able to take a trip. I'm going to need to be able to take a road trip out to Colorado, you know, to hang out and stuff like that, you know? So it's like, you know, there's all these different opportunities available to us because we are, you know, part of the innovator kind of class in this new industry that is, you know, and it is a new industry to us. It's like, the industry has matured to this point, but
it's getting so new.
It's getting exported now to other countries, and now they're like embracing that culture of pipe culture and getting into it. So like that's incredible, you know, and that's blowing my mind. So yeah, who knows what's next, man? You know, it's really exciting. It's very exciting, and I think this type of thing of us having conversations and doing podcasts about it is really interesting too, because that's nuts. They're exporting the culture, you know. So,
well, all right, holy mackerels, that was a long ass interview. That was the longest ever, but it didn't feel like it. The only time I felt it was going long is when I had to use the restroom. But man, getting to know this guy, it was amazing. I love it. So cool. It's so amazing. These artists are you know, willing to give us this time to get to know them. I feel real selfish. Because I get to meet these guys. It's super cool, and like, it's super neat. Man, Chaka, go check them out. Follow them. Super awesome. I want to throw this out there. We got some Elev8 veterans. It's our 501c3. Help us out. It's really cool. You can buy these little packages that you get some bath bombs or something like that, and then some of the money goes to help Elev8 veterans. It's a 501c3. And to help out with that as well, you can also join our Elev8 Doll, our Elev8 Brand Ambassador Program. Super cool, and you get to help build Elev8. Mind, body, spirit, it's a way of life. Help us out. It's cool. This industry is cool. I love it, and I love your help. Thanks out, Elev8. Mind, body, spirit, y'all.